News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GBNews.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely
Right.
stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship,
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
and no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama,
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
romance,
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
adventure,
Etc.
That's the whole point.
and action.
Read my superstar panel that already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 p.m. It's Patrick Christys, it's GB News, and a kick in the whatsits for anyone who wants to secure our borders, because apparently Rwanda is not a safe country. There's more to this than meets the eye, though, and we'll be revealing all of that very, very shortly. Those Rwanda flights have been delayed. Now, though, non-stop Tory witch hunt. Yes, that's right, the Privileges Committee, they're going after those people that they said put pressure on the committee, tried to undermine it. I'm sorry, but do we live in North Korea? In other news, I'm also going to be talking a lot about this. Look, we could see this problem coming an absolute mile off, couldn't we? If you put gender-neutral toilets in schools, it is asking for trouble. And unfortunately, the worst case scenario may well have happened now at a school in Essex. I will have all of the alleged details coming your way very shortly. I'm also going to be talking about this. Now, I tend to be against nationalising anything, really, based on the grounds that it would appear to me that all of our politicians are absolutely awful at running a bath. However, when it comes to the waterways, is the situation slightly different? We currently have hosepipe bans in places where there is enough water, but companies have not been investing in the infrastructure enough, which now means you can get fined £1,000 if you want to water your geraniums. And I think that's a bit rich. And finally, last night, yes, here we go. Well, I tell you what, I was doing the stripping, wasn't I, at the Dream Boys last night for charity. Thank you very much. Do you want to see a little sneaky peek of how I got on? I'm going to make you sit through the whole thing later. Anyway, gbviews at gbnews.com. Look, get your emails coming in thick and fast. First and foremost, I want to know your initial reaction to apparently Rwanda not being a safe country. We'll have some more info on that, because it's not quite as simple as Rwanda not being a safe country. gbviews at gbnews.com. But now it's the headlines. Oh.
Patrick Christys, what a tease. Good afternoon. It's 3 minutes past 3. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Rishi Sunak says he fundamentally disagrees with the Court of Appeal after it ruled against the government's Rwanda asylum plan. 2 of the 3 judges found the East African country wasn't safe as asylum seekers may be sent back to their home country. The Rwandan government has taken issue with the ruling, claiming it's one of the safest countries in the world. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, says the government will seek permission to appeal to the Supreme Court.
Well, the Prime Minister and I have made a promise to the British people to stop the boats. We are committed to delivering on that promise. We've got an unsustainable problem that we need to fix. And whilst, of course, we are disappointed with the decision today, we will be putting in an application to seek permission to appeal the judgment very, very swiftly.
Spying on left-wing groups by a secret Metropolitan Police squad wasn't justified and the unit should have been closed down. That's according to the findings of a public inquiry into undercover policing. It covered the activities of the Special Demonstration Squad between 1968 and 1982. A spokesperson for campaigners says the findings are devastating for the police, the security services and government. The Met Police has apologised and says that undercover policing has undergone radical reform over the years. Elsewhere, a police officer has been placed under formal investigation for voluntary homicide after a teenager was shot dead after he refused a traffic stop in Paris. The mother of the 17-year-old is leading a march in the suburb of Nanterre in tribute to her son, with cries of justice for Nahel. At least 180 people have been arrested so far after 2 nights of unrest. Earlier, it was announced that 40,000 police officers would be deployed across the country to deal with the protests. And back here, Boris Johnson's allies have been criticised by the Privileges Committee for what it describes as undermining the House of Commons procedures. They include Nadine Dorries, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg and Priti Patel. The Privileges Committee report 2 weeks ago found the former Prime Minister had repeatedly misled Parliament over COVID breaches in Number 10. The inquiry now says MPs should consider whether their actions could be a contempt of Parliament and what further action to take. Nicola Sturgeon has told the COVID-19 inquiry that Scotland had no plan for a non-flu pandemic and that learning from it is of critical importance. The former First Minister was questioned this morning on how prepared Scotland was, as well as how she handled the pandemic. She also told the inquiry her government did its best, but admitted it didn't get everything right. Ms Sturgeon was asked whether the plan was inadequate.
There was no set plan, which, as I say, is not the same as saying there was no thinking into how we dealt with a pandemic that had features and characteristics of flu in terms of transmissibility, but also the severity and what we came to understand in terms of the asymptomatic transmission of COVID-19. So I would readily accept that there was a gap in terms of the pandemic we ultimately were dealing with.
Thames Water says it's working with shareholders to secure extra cash as ministers draw up contingency plans in the event of its collapse. The UK's biggest water supplier is battling to finance the £14 billion worth of debt following interest rate rises. Parliamentary Under-Secretary for Health, Neil O'Brien, says the government will step in if needed. One of the world's most used artificial sweeteners could be declared a possible carcinogen next month. New research from the World Health Organization has found aspartame used in Diet Coca-Cola and extra chewing gum could potentially cause cancer. The study by the International Agency for Research on Cancer does not take into account how much of a product a person can safely consume. And ever dreamed of having your own private jet, a plane all to yourself? Well, that's exactly what happened rather unexpectedly to one estate agent over in the US. Phil Stringer was the sole passenger on an American Airlines plane flying from Oklahoma City to Charlotte. The flight had been repeatedly delayed due to severe storms, causing widespread cancellations. And when it finally departed after an 18-hour delay, there was just the one passenger left on board, along with all of the crew. Looks like he had quite a good time. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. Whew, back over to Patrick.
Well, loads on the agenda today. Serious news at the top of the show, though. This Rwanda verdict is absolutely infuriating, and I am convinced it goes against the will of the people. Apparently, Rwanda cannot be confirmed as a safe country. But let's just delve into the ruling a little bit, shall we? Because apparently there are substantial grounds for believing that people sent to Rwanda will be returned to their own countries where they could face persecution despite them having a good case for asylum. So that's the problem with it, apparently, OK? But what are they judging that good case for asylum on? Is that our own definition? I mean, good grief, if it is. If the reality is that our legal system will not be happy until we find a country that is as much of a soft touch as we are, then we are screwed. We would have to find a country that will be willing to let terrorists, rapists and murderers stay, that will be willing to believe fully grown men with beards and grey hair are actually teenage children, that somebody with a wife and kids is actually a gay Christian so they can't be sent home to a Muslim country. I mean, really? What I think this court ruling says, reading between the lines, is that we'd have to find a country that's willing to just let anyone stay. But just in terms of Rwanda as a, quote, safe country, for the people who live there, Rwanda's constitution bars discrimination based on ethnic origin, tribe, clan, colour, sex, region, social origin, religion or faith, opinion, economic status, culture, language, social status, physical or mental disability. So no discrimination for any of those people based on any of those grounds. Its constitution guarantees the right to freely join political organisations and protects Rwandans from discrimination on grounds of, here we go again, membership or non-membership in such organisations. It also states that freedom of press, of expression, of access to information are recognised and guaranteed by the state. So that sounds pretty great, really. But what about specifically for refugees? Well, I am quoting now from the United Nations Refugee Agency, which has this to say. As of the end of March 2023, Rwanda hosted 132,305 refugees, asylum seekers and other displaced populations. Without prejudice to other laws, any person having obtained refugee status in Rwanda shall enjoy the rights and liberties provided for by international instruments on refugees ratified by Rwanda. Regarding self-reliance, so how they can all look after each other and themselves, indeed, once they've been given refugee status, refugees have the right to work, freedom of movement, hold documentation such as ID cards, they can own properties, including land, and can enter contracts on businesses and land leases. Regarding financial inclusion, the Rwandan National Financial Inclusion Strategy for 2020 to 2024 places refugees in the high priority segments for financial inclusion. Right, OK. So it's just a bit ridiculous, isn't it, that we can't send people there, especially when one considers the EU is happy to help Libyan refugees settle in Rwanda. Germany is considering copying Britain when it comes to a Rwanda policy. The EU helps to support camps in Turkey on the Syrian and Iraqi borders. I honestly think now, after dither, delay, waste of time, etc., etc., I honestly think it's time to have a Rwanda referendum, an illegal migration bill referendum. I am sick and tired of this dragging on. GB Views at GBNews.com. Keep them coming. I will have a whole host of top guests and MPs as well on this very, very shortly. But a major blow for the government as their Rwanda plan has been ruled unlawful by the Court of Appeals. Lord Burnett said that the West African country is not safe. Sending anyone there would breach Article 3 of the ECHR. The government are not going down without a fight. They are seeking permission to take the decision to the Supreme Court, as Suella Braverman says that Rwanda is indeed a safe country with a good track record. Let's go now to the Royal Courts of Justice with GB News' Home and Security Editor. It's Mark White. Mark, thank you very much. A blow for the government, but it's not over yet.
No, it's not, but I think it's increasingly clear now that the government is fighting a battle on multiple fronts in its efforts to try to get this Rwanda policy operational. A battle, of course, from the courts with today's decision ruling that policy to be unlawful, a battle as well with regard to what's happening in the House of Lords and their continuing determination to block the illegal immigration bill, that fight in Parliament only intensifying, and a battle, of course, from those that the Home Secretary would describe as lefty lawyers and activist groups who are continuing to fight the government and its plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda, and many other, of course, government policies with regards to the small boats crisis. So given that, we spoke a short time ago to the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, and put it to her that with all of these various fronts now in that battle against, it seems, the government policy, was that policy unravelling? This is what she said.
Our bill is absolutely essential as an element in fixing this problem. It will allow us to detain and remove those who arrive here illegally. The problem is out of control. 45,000 people arrived here illegally last year. It's costing the British taxpayer £6 million a day in hotel accommodation. That is why the British people want us to fix this problem. The system is rigged against them, and that's why we're doing everything within our power to fix the system, change our laws and stop the boats.
Well, the Prime Minister and Suella Braverman today saying that they are determined to continue to push for that Rwanda policy to be approved by the courts, and that's why they will take this to the Supreme Court. We think October, November time. There has been some time penciled in at the Supreme Court to hear this very crucial issue, but it is probably likely to be at least the end of the year, maybe into the beginning of next year, before we get a definitive decision on this, Patrick.
Look, Mark, thank you very, very much. Mark White there, our Home and Security Editor outside the Royal Courts of Justice. I am going to enter into the fray now, Conservative Member of Parliament for Stoke-on-Trent North. It's Jonathan Gullis. Jonathan, thank you very, very much. I know you have incredibly strong views about the Rwanda plan, so do I. And from what I can gather now, this idea of Rwanda not being a safe country appears to centre around the fact that we can't be sure that they wouldn't deport people back to their own countries and that those people wouldn't face prejudice there, which, as far as I can tell, means that they are just not as soft touch as we are and our judges don't like it.
Well, I think you did a great job of dismantling the nonsense that the idea Rwanda is not a safe third country. And actually, I think we should remember that it was, as you said earlier, Patrick, a split decision. The Lord Chief Justice actually was on the side of the British people, on the side of members of Parliament in the House of Commons who are obviously trying to get this legislation through, because he made it clear that he could see no evidence that there were any returns agreements between Rwanda and any of these countries that these illegal migrants allegedly come from. Of course, we don't actually know because we haven't got any documentation to back it up. So I think it just goes on to show yet again the frustration the British people will be feeling right now when we have had two judges who have ultimately decided to go with the UNHCR, despite, as you said, Patrick, they advertise on their own website that they have 50,000 Burundi refugees registered in Rwanda, the fact they did a deal with Libyans trying to get to Rwanda as well. You know, the irony, the hypocrisy is not lost on anyone here. And yet they were there with their lefty lawyer mates, with these activist groups, trying to provide evidence to say Rwanda is not a safe third country. Well, we'll believe that when they start acting as if it isn't by stopping using Rwanda themselves.
But the problem is now that, but judging by this, unless something, which it may well go, return to the Supreme Court. I mean, the High Court thought it was all right, so, you know, there's every chance. But we would have to try to find a country that would have our own soft touch element to it, where somebody who, by that metric, could rape someone in this country and then still not be deported to Sudan because that's a failed state. So they would have to serve all of their prison time in Rwanda. Well, we can't really expect any country to want to do that. I mean, it's just madness.
and discuss the
It
challenges.
is madness, and it's terrifying that ultimately these are sort of the conditions that the Court of Appeal have tried to push upon the UK government today. And I just hope to God that common sense will prevail. And like you say, we can get the quick win that we want by making sure the Supreme Court rule on our side. And all the evidence that you've given, perhaps we should turn up as witnesses, Patrick, to give evidence to the Supreme Court for the government to make the case for why Rwanda is a safe third country. And also, I feel for the Rwandan government, who have done so much work to turn this country around from what we know was a dark past. We've done so much to show a forward-moving, capitalist, innovative agenda that's going to really drive growth and prosperity for all. A very young country, population-wise as well, that's got full of excitement and opportunity. Imagine what it says to them. It says to the rest of the world, this country somehow should be sneered at and looked down upon, essentially, because people... the do-gooders, the lovey-dovey types who want to be liked on Twitter by Gary Neville and Gary Lineker say that it's not a safe country, yet haven't ever been there once in their life.
Can you imagine, seriously, if this was just over a slightly different issue, where a load of kind of stuffy, white, middle-aged, mostly men, were looking down at an African nation going, they're hardly civilised. They haven't got rules and order and laws. They'd be called frothing great big racists, wouldn't they? But when it comes to this situation where they go, no, everyone's... I mean, they've got 132,305 refugees and asylum seekers and other displaced populations as of the end of March 2023, with basically no issues whatsoever, pretty much. They're looking after these people. They're trying to throw their arms around the world, and they have, kind of ruddy-faced... people who look like they enjoy a glass of port all 3 in the evening, saying that this African nation can't look after nice people. I just find it quite offensive. Surely this is quite offensive. Gary Lineker should be piping up about this stuff, shouldn't he?
Well, absolutely, it is offensive. And as you say, Rwanda, with all the evidence that you outlined in their constitution, in their economic outlook, have done an awful lot to say that they want to go for an economic model that brings people from around the world into their country. They want to invest in the jobs and skills. They want to invest in the homes of the future. And they want all those people to help build their economy and become one of the fastest growing economic African nations in their continent. And ultimately, like you say, if anyone else was talking this, if you and I were looking down at Rwanda, we'd be branded racist, fascist and loneliness and God knows what else. But ultimately, it's for the absolute birds. The reality is actually we believe that at the end of the day, people should not be coming here illegally, unnecessarily risking their lives, putting humongous pressure on the financial purse in this country in the midst of a cost of living crisis, decimating the hospitality, retail and leisure sector, decimating communities by losing out on housing supply issues, taking school places away, adding further pressure to the NHS, as well as the fact that we could be faced with £32 million a day by the middle to end of 2026 if we don't start stamping down this. When are the judges going to take that into account as well?
Yeah, and what about all the tens of thousands of people who've lost their jobs to make way for these asylum seeker hotels? I did a bit of a segment on this yesterday. I had a Labour MP on. I mean, she was nice enough, bless her, and she was obviously looking after the local people in a sense. But I did ask her, well, do you now support the Rwanda policy or turning boats back? And she was like, well, no, and then gives the usual kind of tripe about we've got to be really firm on, tackling the people smuggling gangs. You think, well, that's all right, but I mean, in the short term, how on earth is that going to help the 95 people who've just lost their jobs in your area? If you magnify that out across the country, by my metric, nearly 20,000 people have lost their jobs as a result of these asylum seeker hotels. I've just got to ask you, Jonathan, just finally, is it getting to a point now where some form of referendum on the Rwanda deal or the illegal migration bill as a whole should be called? Because something has to be done. Nothing is being allowed to be done at the moment. I mean, is it fair on the public, this? Should we have some kind of referendum? I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I don't want us to have a referendum. Again, just delays it further and comes at a huge cost. But if that is the only way we're going to really tell the Twitterati and make them understand, as well as the metropolitan elite of our country, the establishment, understand that this is what people in places like Stoke-on-Trent, North Kidsgrove and Torquay and across our great nation want. If that's how far we've got to get in order to do that, then so be it. But as I say, I hope common sense can prevail and that the factors that we outlined about the impact it's having socially and economically on our country, as well as the safety of our young people, that dreadful story of that young girl being raped, as you alluded to earlier, as well as, of course, the fact that, people are unnecessarily risking their lives. And this is a one part of a wider package designed to deter people from unnecessarily making the journey, not choosing to put thousands of pounds in the hands of smuggling gangs, especially when we don't know who these people are, where they come from, not what age they are either, because we're not doing the bone density tests that would allow us to know the age of people. We're having to take their word for it upon arrival, as well as obviously clearly, and as we saw today, one of the national newspapers was talking about the fact that ISIS are plotting terrorist attacks. There will be terrorists, there will be criminals using these routes to smuggle into this country. And because they're not being detained in these hotels, they're able to just walk into our community and go missing, and God knows what they're up to.
Yeah, Jonathan, thank you very much. Always great to have you on the show, and take care. Good luck with everything. Jonathan Gullis, who is the MP for Stoke-on-Trent North. Just quickly, all I will say is everything else is coming true, isn't it? What Jonathan Gullis was saying there about how terrorists might end up using this small boat farce in order to infiltrate Britain. I mean, people said that it'll only be a matter of time before somebody is seriously hurt by someone who's just come across in a small boat. Well, we've had at least one murder. It's only a matter of time until some kind of issue relating to women in our community rises up. Well, that's now been happening. It'll only be a matter of time before the gender-neutral toilets cause an issue in schools. Well, that's literally, supposedly anyway, according to reports, just happened. I mean, how long is it until something terrible happens when it comes to ISIS and terrorism? And in fact, it's on the front of one of the national newspapers, a topic I'm going to be talking about very shortly. A massive terror attack has been foiled with British ISIS jihadis. But you are watching and listening to GB News. Coming up in just a tick, Boris allies including Nadine Dorries and Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg have been heavily criticised for putting improper pressure over the Partygate investigation. But why is all of this still going on? It's nearly been ages anyway. It's been ages since he stood down as Prime Minister. He isn't even an MP anymore. This is just absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? Anyway, all of this to come. Patrick Christys, GB News, Britain's News Channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, the House of Commons Privileges Committee has released its report into the process of its Partygate inquiry into former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, lambasting MPs who, it says, sought to undermine the work of the committee. The report blasted Boris Johnson's allies, including Nadine Dorries, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg and Priti Patel, who took it upon themselves to, I'm just quoting now, undermine procedures of the House of Commons by criticising its investigation into the former Prime Minister's conduct. Right. With me in the studio now is GB News' Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood. Good stuff. Is this the same committee, that was led by a woman who'd already said that Boris Johnson was a proven liar, a bloke as well that maybe had broken lockdown rules? That committee?
This is that committee. This is the Privileges Committee. And you'll remember that the 90-day recommendation for suspension from the House of Commons took a lot of people by surprise when Boris Johnson was handed that committee report a couple of weeks ago. And the reason why 90 days was that sanction that was recommended for Boris Johnson and the lack of ability to get what's known as a former member's pass, a lot of that was to do with how they thought he was acting towards the committee. And as part of that report, they said they would issue a supplementary report in the coming days that would talk about what they described as a concerted, coordinated campaign of intimidation against the members of the committee. That is this report released this morning.
Can I just politely suggest that it's impossible to be intimidated by Jacob Rees-Mogg?
I think that there are some members of this committee who are taking the words of what's known as Erskine May to the letter. And the reason why this matters is there are some arcane rules in Parliament about how one must be deferential towards the Procedures Committee. But what appears to happen here is they are taking the most extreme interpretation of those guidelines and rules set out by Erskine May. And the reason I say that is that there are some really peculiar words within this report. For example, we have set out some of the most disturbing examples of the coordinated campaign to interfere with the work of the committee.
Everyone at home, can I just say, prepare to be disturbed. Disturbed.
These are the disturbing examples that are listed. A tweet by Michael Fabricant on the 9th of June 2023 stating this: serious questions will need to be asked about the manner in which this investigation was conducted. That's an example of the most disturbing...
I am disturbed.
...statements. Or Lord Zach Goldsmith retweeting a tweet that called the inquiry a witch hunt in a kangaroo court. A lot of this is about the language of kangaroo court, and it lists, of course, Mark Jenkinson, Nadine Dorries, Michael Fabricant, Brandon Clark-Smith.
Banana Republic.
Yes, but this is the committee thinking that and they do actually have some backing up in this, in that there are rules about how you must allow the Privileges Committee to get on unimpeded with its business. The question is how draconianly do you enforce those rules? And what it's starting to look like to some observers is that this committee thinks of itself a little bit too highly.
This is the point. There's a massive element of hypocrisy here with this whole thing about, like, well, Boris Johnson thought he was above the rules as Prime Minister, but he is just one of us. We are all equal. And then when it comes to any criticism of the committee, we're beyond reproach. We're a committee. Well, you cannot possibly criticise us. Well, I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous.
Well, frankly, it does seem to be a fundamental part of democracy that elected representatives can speak without let or hindrance. In fact, within our democracy, there are special rules in Parliament known as parliamentary privilege, which means MPs actually have more free speech than the average individual within the House of Commons. Just not when it comes to criticising this committee of Harriet Harman, it seems.
Just crucially and quickly, Tom, then, does this mean anything for Jacob Rees-Mogg, Priti Patel? You know, do they get fined now or something?
We learn soon, because what this report asked members of Parliament to do is to table a motion within reasonable time, which Penny Mordaunt, the Leader of the Commons, has now done, which would be able to note the recommendations of this report. It wants a resolution of the House of Commons, this will be being voted on Monday, that considers where the House has agreed to refer a matter relating blah, 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 basically agreeing with this whole report.
Right.
And then it says it will be for the House to consider what further action, if any, to take in respect of the members of the House in this special report. It does like to refer to itself as a special report.
This is really why people hate politics and politicians. And I'm sorry, but that is not because of a bit of cheese and wine during lockdown. It's because of this rubbish that we see now served up. The length of time and taxpayers' money and effort and bandwidth that this has been given. And then the follow-up, the secondary inquiry into it. I'll tell you what, that lot must have been nightmares at school. Can you imagine? Anyway, Tom Harwood, thank you very much, our Deputy Political Editor. Right, loads more coming, plenty more reaction to bring you over the next 2.5 hours to that Rwanda ruling. And coming up next, I will be discussing the dangers of gender-neutral loos in schools after allegations that some girls have been seriously sexually assaulted. Good grief. Right now, though, it's your headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 3:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Rishi Sunak says he fundamentally disagrees with the Court of Appeal after it ruled against the government's Rwanda asylum plan. 2 of the 3 judges found the East African country wasn't safe as asylum seekers may be sent back to their home country. The Rwandan government has taken issue with the ruling, claiming it's one of the safest countries in the world. The Home Secretary, Swela Braverman, says the government will seek permission to appeal to the Supreme Court.
Well, the Prime Minister and I have made a promise to the British people to stop the boats. We are committed to delivering on that promise. We've got an unsustainable problem that we need to fix. And whilst, of course, we are disappointed with the decision today, we will be putting in an application to seek permission to appeal the judgment very, very swiftly.
The mother of the 17-year-old shot dead by police after he refused a traffic stop has been leading a march in the Parisian suburb of Nanterre. People took to the streets across France to protest against the killing for a second night. Over 150 people have been arrested for rioting. A police officer has been placed under formal investigation for voluntary homicide. Earlier, it was announced that 40,000 police officers would be deployed across the country to deal with the protests. Spying on left-wing groups by a secret Metropolitan Police squad wasn't justified and the unit should have been closed down. That's according to the findings of a public inquiry into undercover policing. It covered the activities of the Special Demonstration Squad between 1968 and 1982. A spokesperson for campaigners says the findings are devastating for the police, the security services and the government. The Met Police has apologised and says undercover policing has undergone radical reform over the years. And in breaking news, the 3 Just Stop Oil protesters who invaded the pitch at Lord's have been charged with aggravated trespass. Judith Murray, Daniel Knorr and Jacob Bourne disrupted the second Ashes test. Yesterday they'll appear at Westminster Magistrates Court next month. And you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2607 and 1.1588 euros. The price of gold is £1,512.61 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,469 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Well, this will get a lot of you going. The debate over whether gender-neutral toilets in schools are safe has been massively reignited after female pupils were allegedly sexually assaulted in a serious way. at a school in Essex. The allegations have emerged just days before the government is due to unveil its transgender guidance for schools. But whilst it is expected to say that students should not be allowed to use facilities designed for the opposite sex, its advice on gender-neutral toilets is likely to remain unclear, which is, I think we can all agree, the last thing that we need. Let's get the thoughts of author and broadcaster Rebecca Reid on this story. Rebecca, look, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Why on earth have we got gender-neutral toilets in schools? My concern is that stories like this one, which is at the moment allegations, we should make it very clear, about a school in Essex, are just going to become the norm.
I mean, it's already the norm. 80% of students currently at school in 2021, in an Ofsted report, said that they had been sexually harassed or assaulted at school. So sexual assault in schools is endemic, has always been endemic, is an ongoing problem which teachers are reporting is getting worse. That is not to do with the location of where it's taking place. People are being sexually assaulted in all sorts of places at schools. It's not the room where it happens that's the problem, it's the person doing the sexual assaulting that's the problem. And I'm telling you, the kind of boy who's going to sexually assault somebody will do it in a changing room, in a field, on the bus home, anywhere that they can. The bathroom is not at fault.
But why would you give them another space? This is the thing. Why would you give another space, which is actually probably a very secretive and, frankly, the kind of perfect space that you would need if you were a sexual predator, and then also add that to the perfect excuse for them, which is that someone in a school can walk up to a teacher now and go, "I'm a girl, miss, please don't tell my parents," and then they can identify as a girl, then they can walk into that changing room and they can sexually assault a real girl.
But again, the root cause here is that there are apparently, and it's predominantly boys, who want to assault and commit violence against women so much that they're willing to do these things. Changing the label on a bathroom, and very often the reason that these schools have gender-neutral bathrooms is the same reason that GB News is a gender-neutral bathroom, which is that it's a safe space.
There's a key difference there, Rebecca, isn't there? And this is a key difference. That GB News is not a school, OK?
And it's not a school, but it's still a workplace. It still has a right to protect the people who work there.
But there is a key difference. There is a key difference between a building full of adults, isn't there, and a school building full of young children, where, frankly, they are all more vulnerable. It's not really, is it? Because children are more vulnerable than adults, and this is the thing. This is why I would argue it's
having that bathroom is the same. The
It's
logic
very,
is it's
very,
cheaper,
very,
it's easier,
it's very, very unsafe, I think, isn't it, to have a situation in a school where someone can identify as whatever they want, shamelessly use that as a mask, walk into a room. I appreciate that what you're saying is true, which is that the ultimate problem here is that there are people in this world who exist who want to go and sexually assault people. I understand that. My problem is that we're making it easier for them with a policy that would appease or appeal to, in reality, about 0.01% of the population. But it makes 100% of women less safe.
The reason that schools have gender-neutral bathrooms is not to do with some deep woke culture war. It's the fact that it's cheaper and it means that it takes less space. When they're putting bathrooms in, they're not thinking about the half a percentage of person who's trans in the UK, let alone within schools. They're thinking about how do we cut corners and cut costs. Realistically, all schools should have self-contained bathrooms, and they should all be disabled accessible. That's the gold standard for bathrooms. There's no reason you shouldn't have that. It's just more expensive and it takes up more space. But my issue with this topic is that it's only of interest that girls are being assaulted at school when it's part of an anti-trans, anti-non-binary conversation.
OK, how would you feel, seriously, if you had a daughter who went to a school, there you go, and who went to a school, and then one day, unfortunately, your daughter came home, said that something terrible had happened, and you went into the school and you said, is it true that you are allowing children to identify as whatever they want without telling parents, that you've imposed a gender-neutral toilet which anyone can use, and in the case of this school, you haven't done a risk assessment about it either? You would be absolutely fuming, would you not?
I would be fuming that my child had been assaulted, but my concern would be that if somebody she went to school with wanted to assault her, that they would have made that happen wherever it happened. People were being assaulted long before there were gender-neutral bathrooms, and even if there are no gender-neutral bathrooms, they will continue to be. It doesn't make it that much easier. The issue is that we have a crisis of masculinity and that we have an increasing, not decreasing, number of boys who are committing these kinds of crimes. We can argue about bathrooms all day long, but the important thing is to understand why are young men getting worse worse, not better. Because by all concepts of the imagination, we should all be getting better and more progressive and better to each other as time goes on, and boys are getting worse. And that is a big question.
No, fascinating stuff. Look, Rebecca, thank you very, very much. Always enjoy our conversation. Rebecca Reid there, of course, the author, broadcaster, GB News regular as well. Right, you are watching and listening to GB News. Coming next, I will be joined by Liam Halligan, our very own, to talk about whether or not we should nationalise the waterways. And you may also be treated to some highlights from me as a dream boy. I've had some interesting emails in. I will go to those very, very shortly. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
OK, so now the government is drawing up plans to potentially nationalise Thames Water. It's on the brink of collapse. I appreciate that normally the words nationalisation and the waterways go together shortly before you fall asleep. But this is more interesting than it sounds, because the company services 1 in 4 of us with our water supply and apparently can't continue without a major cash injection from the shareholders or needs to be taken into emergency ownership. However, this has got me particularly exercised because we have things like hosepipe bans and you could be fined £1,000 for daring to water your geraniums in the heat. But we do actually have enough water. We just don't have enough infrastructure. And that, I think, is a massive problem. Should we nationalise them? Liam Halligan is here now with On The Money. I'm normally dead against nationalisation based on the grounds that I don't really think that the government or our politicians appear to be particularly good at running anything. However, is there a special case to be made for nationalising the waterways?
Potentially. I mean, let's just think back. Back in 1989, I remember it, I'm old enough to remember it, Thames Water was privatised. It was one of the earliest sort of privatisations. So that was in 1989. And as you say, it covers 27% of all households. It's not just London, it's all the way over to Gloucestershire in the west, it's Kent to the southeast of London. And it's partly owned, believe it or not, by governments, by the Chinese government, by the government of the United Arab Emirates. Big chunks of it used to be owned by an Australian investment bank. This is the free market, right? And it's got a debt pile, and this is the problem. The debt pile is £14 billion. That's a huge amount of money that it's managed to stack up since privatisation in 1989. So what's the problem? That debt pile, Patrick, half of it is what we call index-linked. So as inflation goes up, the interest payments on that debt become higher. And, of course, as interest rates themselves go up, the interest payments on those debts go higher. So this is a major, major problem because Thames Water, the revenue that it makes about 2 billion quid a year, so 14 billion quid of debt on revenues of 2 billion quid a year. You see it's quite a lot. But as the cost of servicing that debt goes up, because inflation is going up, because interest rates are going up, it's got to use more and more of its money to service its debt. And it's got less money, even though it's getting money in from all of us all the time, to actually do repairs, to keep going, to pay its staff, and that's the problem.
So when people who have said this a lot recently, when there's hosepipe bans, etc., and they say this is absolutely outrageous, they are paying their chief execs big salaries, they may be paying shareholders out, they're paying dividends, etc., and they are not investing in the infrastructure that it needs to actually get that water to my house. Is that true, then? Because you're mentioning a lot about the debt there, which probably would explain a lot of why they're not...
Yeah, look, when you're running thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of miles of pipe, some of which was laid down in the Victorian era and it's buried in the ground, you know, there's a lot of maintenance to do, and they do lots of maintenance, but sometimes the maintenance goes wrong or it's overdue. You get mass leakages of sewage, you've had dirty beach issues. Thames Water, when you think about it, you know, there's a lot of really old infrastructure in London and the South East. And, of course, at the margin, they could always invest more and pay a bit less to their shareholders, pay a bit less to their bosses. Their boss that just resigned, she earned 1.6 million quid a year. So, of course, there's a tension here between investment and saving the environment and so on, and actually keeping the water flowing so you don't have to do things like hosepipe bans. That is definitely a tension. But the question now, Patrick, is because the financial markets that trade debt that Thames Water needs to raise, like the government, it will issue a bond, right, in order to borrow money off the market. The market can now see, investors can now see, they can look at the balance sheet, they can see, crikey, Thames Water's the most indebted of all the regional water companies. It's the biggest. They're thinking, crikey, they're paying tens of millions, hundreds of millions of pounds a year just on debt interest. Can they afford to pay me for the debt that I already own? And so the price of the debt has gone down, which then means the interest rate goes up more. That's the problem.
So if we wanted to nationalise the waterways, which I know is a very broad brush term, but if we wanted to, is it actually possible?
It is certainly possible under the terms of the 1989 privatisation legislation. You can nationalise the whole thing, but that would be incredibly expensive because there'll be court cases, and by law, the government would have to compensate the shareholders, OK? Right. And then the government would also have to then take on the state, the debt. Right? Yeah. So what the law also allows, the 1989 legislation, it allows for, and you intimated in your introduction, special emergency measures, which is like a temporary taking into public ownership while we sort things out, while we have a really good look at the balance sheet. And the government can actually force the existing shareholders, which are other governments in some cases, as I said, the Chinese, the UAE. Well, good luck with that. They can force them, potentially, to stump up the money in order to take away some of this debt so the interest payments are lower. Look, two things to end on. This is what happens when inflation and interest rates go up, right? It's really massive stuff. It affects everything, not just people's mortgages and personal loans. That's the first thing. The second thing is the government wheeled out a relatively junior minister you won't have heard of called Neil O'Brien to say on the radio this morning, quotes, "This will absolutely not affect your water bills," end quotes, right? Right. It strikes me, Patrick, whether we have full nationalisation, whether we have a temporary emergency nationalisation, whether it stays in private hands, but there's some kind of support structure, in some way, shape or form, either through higher water bills, higher taxes or both, we will pay.
Yeah, exactly. I read an article this morning that water bills might go up 40%. So there we go. Anyway, Liam, look, thank you very much, as ever. Liam Halker, our economics and business editor. Right, so I believe that I might be able to play you a couple of little clips from last night now. So, look, as many people know that I've been doing my best to try to raise a little bit of money for the mental health charity Mind. And Mind is a cause that's very close to my heart. It steps in where maybe the NHS, sadly, because it's overstretched, etc., cannot be there right at that vital moment where someone needs urgent mental health care. So, thanks to you wonderful people, we have now raised £82,000, which is absolutely staggering, really. In fact, 82,330. The link for you to go on, if you can, if you've got a couple of quid, is justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. Anyway, last night was the night where I had to uphold my end of the bargain and dance on stage with the Dream Boys. And we've got a couple of little bits of it, I think, for you. So, yes, there I am. In case you couldn't tell, I'm the dapper chap in white. It's an officer and a gentleman themed. And there we go. So I was at the Churchill Theatre in Bromley in Kent in front of around 1,000 baying women. Apparently, I have to warn you now, ironically, that there is some flashing in this. That's the lights, by the way, given the context of what we're talking about. So thank you very, very much to everybody who has donated. I had to do 3 performances on the night, one of which was a solo. Now, over the course of this show, we will be playing you a couple of different bits and bobs. This was a YMCA number, yes, exactly. And then later on, we will be showing you the big reveal. But I don't know, it's up to you whether or not you want to email in, gbviews@gbnews.com. How far do you think I went? Did I just take my top off? Did it go further than that? But either way, thank you very much to every single person who has donated. £82,330. One of the most surreal experiences of my life. And I would just like to say a massive thank you to the Dream Boys. That link is justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. I reached out to them. I said I would do it. They've accommodated me for the best part of a year now. They've opened up the rehearsal studios for me. They've made me a part of their performance. And they've all done it to try to help raise money for the mental health charity Mind. So thank you to Jordan, Lowton and everybody else at the Dream Boys. We will be playing the full, unedited version of My Night as a Dream Boy a little bit later on. And make sure you stay tuned for all of that. I was going to say it won't disappoint, but it'll certainly put you off your tea. Anyway, justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. We're close to £82,500. We will be knocking the whole charity rattling the can thing on the head probably within a couple of days. Let's see if we can get to 90k. It's all for a good cause. Anyway, thank you very, very much. Right, OK, so loads more to bring you in the next couple of hours, including all the reaction to the government's Rwanda policy being ruled unlawful, including a statement from the Home Secretary in the House of Commons, which we will bring you live. This is GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Good afternoon, welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. Now, through this evening, a lot of the UK will see dry weather, lots of clear spells. But over the next few days, we're going to continue to see wetter weather push in from the northwest. You can see a front pushing into Scotland later today, and then another one out at the Atlantic at the moment will arrive into the southwest throughout tomorrow. But things will clear up through the rest of the days for most areas. So you can see quite a lot of clear spells developing across the whole of the UK. However, across the far north of Scotland, we've got the first of those fronts coming in, and they could bring some quite hefty downpours throughout the night. But for most of us, clear spells and temperatures a little bit down compared to last night, so a fresher feel by the time we get to Friday morning. Some good sunshine to start for many central and eastern areas of the UK, but then we see that next front push into the southwest. So we'll see some rain, quite a lot of cloud around. The rain's not going to be too heavy, but most areas should see a few spits and spots. But it's the far northwest, so Northern Ireland and much of western and northern Scotland, that will see another batch of rain. Again, there's not too many heavy bursts in there, but it will feel quite dull. And temperatures a little bit down compared to tomorrow. So a cooler feel on Friday, just because there's a lot more cloud around. And then through Friday evening, the rain will continue to push in across many northern areas, bringing quite a lot of cloud around overnight. So it's quite a dull night, quite a lot of low cloud, particularly on any high ground as well. And across the southeast, it's going to be a very mild night. So temperatures holding up in the high teens across the southeast and the mid-teens for many towns and cities elsewhere to start on Saturday. Now, we'll start off with quite a lot of cloud through Saturday morning, but it's going to brighten up through the day. So a good amount of sunshine by the afternoon. And then on Sunday, again, a relatively dry day for many areas, but the breeze will start to pick up, especially across Scotland, where there'll be some particularly heavy rain.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point, but boom.
And action.
Sergeant read my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 4 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News, and a kick in the teeth for anybody who wants to control our borders. Yes, the Rwanda deportation flights have been delayed, I'm afraid, but the government is going to appeal. They're going to take it to the Supreme Court. Why? Well, apparently because Rwanda is not a safe country. But as I will explain, there is more than meets the eye when it comes to what being a safe country really means. Essentially, I think our judicial system wants us to find somewhere that's as much of a soft touch as we are. And that ain't happening. Tell you what, though, this could have been devastating. A huge British ISIS-inspired attack on a very, very public area, a mass gathering in Britain, has been foiled. I'll give you the details in a second. We're also going to be talking about this story as well. When we are going... Oh, unfortunately, we cannot play the clip, I believe, but there we go. Oh, we do. There we go. Now, this is interesting, OK? So ITV were doing a segment about how ordinary, normal, working mums were struggling with the cost of living crisis. Do you want to see who they used?
This customer fears that either bill payers or taxpayers will end up picking up the tab.
The idea that we're going to have even greater water bills, soaring bills at a time of prices already being hiked, and we have to pay a lot for food. That's tough if you're a mum like me, already struggling to get the things that my kid needs.
That's a man and a trade unionist. And Paris is revolting, yes, that's right. So there are widespread riots in Paris, devastating scenes there in the French capital. We will be going live to Paris very shortly because it looks, frankly, like it's kicked right off after the police are accused of executing somebody. There are massive ethnic tensions in Paris. We'll be covering that very, very shortly. And finally, yes, that's right, the big reveal, everybody. Well, last night I danced on stage with the Dream Boys. I'm very happy that it's over with, but it's all because that was my end of the bargain. You guys have donated so far nearly 83 grand for the mental health charity Mind. Here's a sneak peek of how I got on. Sorry. OK, right, email in, gbviews@gbnews.com. Serious matters, though, serious matters. How do you feel about this Rwanda scheme? Do you just think maybe it's time for a referendum on the Rwanda plan, just to get it over the line? gbviews@gbnews.com. Polly now with your headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Well, the top story this afternoon, the Home Secretary says she remains fully committed to her Rwanda policy despite a legal setback today. Suella Braverman also suggested the current system was rigged against the British people. Earlier, the Prime Minister said he fundamentally disagreed with the Court of Appeal after it deemed the move unlawful. 2 of the 3 judges found the East African country was unsafe. The Rwandan government disagrees, claiming it's one of the safest countries in Africa. The Home Secretary says the government will seek permission now to go to the Supreme Court.
Well, the Prime Minister and I have made a promise to the British people to stop the boats. We are committed to delivering on that promise. We've got an unsustainable problem that we need to fix. And whilst, of course, we are disappointed with the decision today, we will be putting in an application to seek permission to appeal the judgment very, very swiftly.
Spying on left-wing groups by a secret Metropolitan Police squad wasn't justified and the unit should have been disbanded. That's according to the findings of a public inquiry into undercover policing that looked at the activities of the Special Demonstrations Squad, the SDS, between 1968 and 1982. A spokesperson for campaigners says the findings are devastating for the police, the security services and the government. The Met Police has apologised and said that undercover policing has since undergone radical reform. A police officer has been placed under formal investigation for voluntary manslaughter after a teenager was shot dead by traffic police in France. The mother of 17-year-old Nahel is leading a march in Nanterre, that's a western suburb of Paris, in tribute to her son, demanding justice. At least 180 people have been arrested so far after 2 nights of unrest that followed his death. Earlier, it was announced that 40,000 police officers would be deployed across the country to deal with subsequent unrest. Here, Boris Johnson's allies have been criticised by the Privileges Committee for what it describes as undermining House of Commons procedures. They include Nadine Dorries, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg and Priti Patel. The Privileges Committee report 2 weeks ago found the former Prime Minister had repeatedly misled Parliament over COVID breaches at Number 10 during lockdown. The inquiry now says MPs should consider whether their actions could be in contempt of Parliament and what further action needs to be taken. Nicola Sturgeon has been telling the COVID-19 inquiry today that Scotland had no plan for a non-flu pandemic and that learning from the episode was of critical importance. The former First Minister was questioned this morning on how well prepared Scotland was, as well as how she personally, as a politician, handled the pandemic. She also told the inquiry her government did its best, but admitted it didn't get everything right. She was asked whether the plan was inadequate.
There's no set plan, which, as I say, is not the same as saying there was no thinking into how we dealt with a pandemic that had features and characteristics of flu in terms of transmissibility, but also the severity and what we came to understand in terms of the asymptomatic transmission of COVID-19. So I would readily accept that there was a gap in terms of the pandemic we ultimately were dealing with.
Thames Water says it's working with its shareholders to secure extra funding as ministers draw up contingency plans to nationalise it in the event of a collapse. The UK's biggest water supplier is battling to finance the £14 billion worth of debt following interest rate rises. Parliamentary Under-Secretary for Health Neil O'Brien says the government will intervene if needed. Now, the 3 Just Stop Oil protesters who invaded the pitch at Lord's Cricket Ground in London yesterday have been charged with aggravated trespass. Judith Murray, Daniel Knorr and Jacob Bourne disrupted the second Ashes test yesterday. They'll appear at Westminster Magistrate Court next month. One of the world's most used artificial sweeteners could be declared a possible carcinogen next month. New research from the World Health Organization has found aspartame used in Diet Coca-Cola and extra chewing gum could potentially cause cancer. The study by the International Agency Research on Cancer does not take into account how much of a product a person can safely consume. Now, have you ever dreamed of having your own private jet, a plane, all to yourself? Well, that's exactly what happened, rather unexpectedly, to one estate agent in the United States. And we'll show you that later. We have to go straight back to Patrick. Sorry about that.
Right, bit of breaking news right at the top of the 4 o'clock. We're going straight to the House of Commons, where Suella Braverman is talking about the fact that the Rwanda plan has been blocked.
And Foreign Minister, and signing an update to our Memorandum of Understanding that would bring it in line with our illegal migration bill. Rwanda has reiterated its commitment and capacity to receive thousands of individuals, process their claims, and provide them with excellent care before they are transitioned to longer-term accommodation with all the necessary support and services. And it is why, under the terms of that agreement, we attempted our first relocation flight to Rwanda to demonstrate that if you come here illegally, you will be removed to a safe third country for your claim to be processed. Importantly, Rwanda is a country where the UNHCR itself operates an emergency transit scheme for migrants from Libya and with which we have a robust agreement to protect asylum seekers from risk of harm. That first relocation flight was unfortunately frustrated by last-minute measures from the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, which has had the effect of pausing flights while our domestic legal proceedings are ongoing. In December, the Divisional Court of the High Court comprehensively upheld the lawfulness of the partnership, confirming that Rwanda was a safe country. That judgment was appealed to the Court of Appeal, which heard the appeal in April of this year and handed down its judgment earlier today. Mr. Speaker, I respect the Court and welcome the fact that it unanimously found in the government's favour on the vast majority of the appeals brought against the policy. Unanimously, the Court of Appeal confirmed that removing asylum seekers to a safe country is entirely consistent with the Refugee Convention, including Article 31. Indeed, the Court of Appeal found that it is lawful, in principle, for the government to relocate people who come to the UK illegally to a safe third country, that the government can designate countries as safe, and that our processes for determining eligibility for relocation were fair. Unfortunately, 2 of the judges were of the view that there were deficiencies in the Rwandan asylum system that risked there being a breach of Article 3 of the ECHR. Importantly, their concerns were not that conditions in Rwanda would be unsafe, but that there was a possibility that they could be returned to other countries from Rwanda where they may suffer ill treatment. It is therefore simply incorrect to say that the Court of Appeal has found that conditions in Rwanda make it unsafe for individuals there. The Court of Appeal has ruled instead that there is a risk of refoulement to other countries from Rwanda. The Lord Chief Justice took a different view. Agreeing with the High Court, he held that there was no real risk of individuals being sent to unsafe countries. He cited the strong assurance given by the Rwandan government, the fact that Rwanda does not have returns agreements with those countries, and the powerful protections provided by monitoring arrangements that would be in place. The result is that the High Court's decision that Rwanda was a safe third country for the purposes of asylum relocation is reversed. We have a strong relationship with Rwanda, Mr. Speaker, and both sides remain committed to the policy. Rwanda is a signatory to the United Nations conventions and has a strong track record of supporting refugees, including for the UNHCR. This is a disappointing judgment, and we will seek permission to appeal it. We hope that the process will be swift, and I'm glad that the Court of Appeal has recognised in paragraph 16 of its summary judgment that this is an important consideration that should be dealt with in a timely fashion. This judgment is disappointing for the majority of the British people who have repeatedly voted for controlled migration, and for all those who want to see us deliver on our moral and democratic imperative to stop the boats. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that all members of this House would agree that the British people are compassionate, reasonable and fair-minded. Since 2015, we have welcomed 500,000 people in need from all over the world via our global safe and legal routes, as well as via our country-specific routes encompassing Ukraine, Hong Kong, Afghanistan and Syria. But they are not naive, Mr. Speaker. While our compassion to help people may be infinite, the public understand that our capacity to do so is finite and therefore precious. The British people will no longer indulge the polite fiction that we have a duty or infinite capacity to support everyone in the world who is fleeing persecution, nor anyone that would simply like to come here to improve their lot and succeeds in making it to our shores. That abuse is unfair on local communities forced to absorb thousands of illegal arrivals and the pressure on public services and social cohesion that this entails. It is unfair on taxpayers who foot the hotel bill currently running to £6 million a day that could rise to £32 million a day by 2026 for people who've broken into this country. It's unfair on those who play by the rules and who want to see an asylum system that is fit for purpose, that our current system is exploited and turned against us by those with no right to be in the UK. It's unfair on those most in need of protection, in particular women, children, and those without the money to pay the people smugglers, that our asylum system is overwhelmed by fit young men who have paid criminals thousands of pounds to smuggle them into the UK. And it's unfair, Mr. Speaker, on people and our partners in the developing world that we in the West continue to maintain an asylum seeker system so open to abuse that it incentivises mass flows of economic migration into Europe, lining the pockets of people smugglers and turning our seas into graveyards, all in the name of a phony humanitarianism. This is madness, Mr. Speaker, and it must end. And that is why we, on this side of the House, are committed to doing whatever it takes to stop the boats. The government remains resolute that we will do exactly that in partnership with Rwanda and through...
OK, so you've been watching and listening to Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary in the House of Commons, just reacting to that Court of Appeal ruling that they said, and this is a really important distinction, which I will explain again, and Suella Braverman put very well there. For all of these reports about Rwanda not being a safe country, that wasn't really what the ruling was about. What the ruling was about, and it was a split decision as well, 2-1, what the ruling was about was that they were concerned that some people that we would send to Rwanda could then end up being deported back to their country of origin from Rwanda, despite them having a good case for asylum. i.e., if we send someone to Rwanda and they send them somewhere unsafe, then we are responsible. We couldn't really be doing that. What Suella Braverman has said that, frankly, that's not really the case, and they are trying to appeal that, which is what they will do. She also was making the point that she said that the generosity of this country is running out for people who, she said, have broken into Britain, and that local communities cannot continue to be forced to absorb huge numbers of people. I've got very shortly a very special guest on this. We're going to be going, in a matter of moments, to Rwanda to speak to somebody who knows all too well what it's like to live over there and to be over there and what a safe country it may or indeed may not be. But first, we're going much closer to home, to our home and security editor, Mark White, is outside the Royal Courts of Justice. Mark, Suella Braverman did make that important distinction, which I think might have gone over the heads of a lot of people in the media today, which is about Rwanda not necessarily not being a safe country, but about the way that they might decide their asylum claims being, well, potentially unsafe.
Yes, I think that's key to the point that she wants to get across, that Rwanda, a country that she's been to, I accompanied her on a trip there in March, she believes is safe, that it is a country where asylum seekers will be looked after and they will be given opportunities. But it's this issue of whether anyone is rejected for asylum and then potentially returned to a third country, their home country, of which they may have fled in the first place, and where they may be subject to ill treatment or worse. That is the concern that was highlighted by the Court of Appeal judges. Two of those judges, because actually the Lord Chief Justice, Lord Burnett, disagreed with those two senior judges. He actually sided with that original decision that was made by the High Court here in December, a decision that Rwanda was safe in the sense that people would not be returned to a third country or to their country of origin because Rwanda does not have an agreement with those other countries. Rwanda has also given assurance that it would not do that, and Rwanda has also agreed to a robust international monitoring system that would ensure that Rwanda is sticking by its side of the deal. So on all those factors, Lord Burnett actually believed that the risk to any asylum seeker in being sent to Rwanda and then being onwardly transferred to another country or their home country was small. However, the majority rules in the Court of Appeal with three judges obviously deciding on this matter, and those two judges, other judges, had decided that it was lawful.
Yeah, Mark, look, fantastically well explained that. Mark White, our Home and Security editor. And when you listen to it like that, really, what more do you want our government, or indeed Rwanda, to do? I can't help but feel as though this is a verdict that centres around some judges thinking, well, you know what? I just really want these people to stay in Britain. And that, I think, is a problem. But let's go now to Rwanda and speak to Adam Bradford. Adam, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to have to ask you to explain a little bit about the context with which you find yourself in Rwanda, and then we'll talk about the country itself. So what's your story?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So first of all, I'm not a secret first asylum seeker from the UK to get across to Rwanda. I actually moved here of my own choice exactly a year ago. I was involved in a Commonwealth Summit, which actually took place here last June. I do a lot of international work with charities and with small businesses, and actually saw the amount of investment and opportunities that Rwanda is branding itself for, and fell in love with the place. So people are very friendly, it's extremely safe, and I don't think you could ask for a warmer welcome. So I've made it my home over the past year.
How do you respond, Adam, to people who say that Rwanda is in any way not a safe country?
It's disappointing when I hear things like that, and I think the beginning of this controversial Rwanda scheme, it really played into some of those dangerous narratives about Africa's not safe, it's corrupt, you'll get kidnapped, it's not, you know, all these kind of old-fashioned beliefs. But I think unless you've been here, you wouldn't know that it's the safest country in Africa. You know, this country has also banned plastic bags since 2008. There's not a piece of litter on the floor anywhere. You know, the security is extremely tight here. And people are very polite and respectful. And I think, you know, this debate around asylum seekers and people illegally coming into the UK, I think the government has jumped on this as an opportunity and weaponized the debate. So, yeah, I get disappointed when I hear things like that.
I think you've touched on a few things that I have suspected, I know a lot of people have suspected for quite a long time, which is that there are actually still a lot of very lazy, I would argue potentially racist tropes about Rwanda as well, and quite possibly Africa as a whole, really, which is things about safety, things about corruption, things about et cetera, being backwards, you know, and being unsafe. And clearly, from your own experiences, that doesn't appear to be the case. Can I also just ask you a little bit about this? So, according to the United Nations Refugee Agency, so this, let's be honest, specifically is about the kind of people that we might be sending to Rwanda. Rwanda hosted 132,305 refugees as of the end of March 2023, very recently. Asylum seekers as well, other displaced populations. What's that like over there? Do you see huge racial and ethnic divides? Do you see class systems that are very obvious? How is it?
It is, yeah, I mean, it just baffles me. I do wonder whether half the people who talk about this place have ever been or even studied what the country is actually like. But let me tell you, today I'm talking to you from the capital city, Kigali, and there's hundreds of different cultures here. There's expats, there's international workers, there's migrants from all around the world. And I think everybody is tolerated and respected. There really is a no-nonsense attitude to conflict and creating division between people. I would also go to add that the country actively promotes good citizenship amongst people. Every third Saturday of the month, every town and city closes for everybody to get on the streets and take part in community work. So to talk about things like safety and racism and, you know, the country not being fit to handle foreigners or people who've come from dangerous situations, to me, it's just absolute rubbish.
Can I just say a massive thank you for coming on the show all the way from Kigali. I could talk to you all day. Unfortunately, I've got other things I need to do with this show. But I really, really do appreciate you coming on, Adam, and I would love to talk to you again very soon because, let's be honest, this is an issue that's going to rumble on. But I just think, you know what never ceases to amaze me when all this tosh about Rwanda not being a safe country is how few media outlets bother to talk to someone who lives in Rwanda. Thank you very much, Adam Bradford there, who is indeed a resident in Rwanda. Right, you are listening and watching GB News. Coming in just a moment, Boris' allies, including Nadine Dorries, Jacob Rees-Mogg, they've been heavily criticised for putting improper pressure over the Partygate investigation. Reaction to this to come. It's an ongoing Tory witch hunt. Oh, yes, and find out all about this massive British ISIS terror attack that was foiled just in time. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, bit pressed for time because Willa Braverman popped up unexpectedly at the top of that hour, so we're going to just crash straight through this with David Campbell-Bannerman, who is a former Conservative MEP. David, thank you very much. I've got you on to get your views on whether or not there is a ridiculous ongoing North Korea-style witch hunt of people who supported Boris Johnson in relation to the Privileges Committee. Is there?
Yes, I'm afraid there is, Patrick. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It is Stalinist, and it's an attack on free speech. I mean, for heaven's sake, MPs have special rights to speak, don't they? Certainly in the chamber. And this is being attacked today. And why? Because they've been offended, the Privileges Committee, about some very justified criticism about the process. It's not personal to them, it's about the process.
Yeah, so they've basically named Jacob Rees-Mogg, Priti Patel, Nadine Dorries and a couple of others as people that they said, oh, they absolutely just shame the process. You know some of the examples of the, quotes, most disturbing elements of their interference and intimidation? One of them was a tweet by Michael Fabricant that just said that this committee, fronted by a woman who'd already assumed that Boris Johnson was a liar and also seconded by an individual who may now have actually broken lockdown rules in a worse way than Boris Johnson, said that this committee needed looking at. And that, David, was disturbing.
Yeah. Well, no, so it does need looking at. And while we're at it, you know, I think the Speaker needs to look at the Deputy Speaker following the allegations from Guido Fawkes about did she have a lockdown party? And was Bernard Jenkin there? Then he's inquiring into that because he was on the Privileges Committee. And also, while they're at it, did number 10 say it's fine for Harman to continue? I mean, who in number 10 did that? So there's a lot of inquiries that are needed that go way beyond this one, and this one has not done a great job, I'm afraid.
No, fascinating. I, for one, welcome the inquiry into whether or not Theresa May attended an illegal lockdown birthday party. I mean, I think that would have been fantastic, you know, and why not? If there was cake there, David, then we'll have to have a serious, long, hard look at that, and whether or not she was ambushed by it. Look, David, can I just say very, very sorry, because I know you've been waiting for a little while, but obviously we had Suella Braverman at the top there, and that's kind of squeezed us a little bit. It was David Campbell-Bannerman there, former Conservative MEP. I'll see you soon. Take care. Right, you are with me, Patrick Christys on GB News. Up next, this is a big one. I'm joined by a former SAS trooper as a terrifying ISIS terror attack on the UK, a mass casualty event, has been uncovered. But right now, it's your headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. The top stories. Rishi Sunak says he fundamentally disagrees with the Court of Appeal after it ruled against the government's Rwanda asylum plan. 2 of the 3 judges involved found the East African country wasn't safe, as asylum seekers may be sent back to their home country. The Rwandan government has taken issue with the ruling as well, claiming it is one of the safest countries in the world. Well, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, says the government will seek permission now to appeal to the Supreme Court.
Well, the Prime Minister and I have made a promise to the British people to stop the boats. We are committed to delivering on that promise. We've got an unsustainable problem that we need to fix. And whilst, of course, we are disappointed with the decision today, we will be putting in an application to seek permission to appeal the judgment very, very swiftly.
The mother of the 17-year-old boy shot dead by police after he refused a traffic stop has been leading a march in the Parisian suburb of Nanterre. People took to the streets across France to protest at the killing for a second night. Over 150 people have been arrested for rioting. A police officer has been placed under formal investigation for voluntary manslaughter. Earlier, it was announced that 40,000 police officers would be deployed across the country to deal with unrest. Here, spying on left-wing groups by a secret Metropolitan Police squad wasn't justified and the unit should have been disbanded. That's the findings of a public inquiry into undercover policing. It uncovered the activities of the SDS, the Special Demonstration Squad, between 1968 and 1982. A spokesperson for campaigners says the findings are devastating for the police. The Met Police has apologised and said undercover policing has undergone radical reform over the years. The 3 Just Stop Oil protesters who invaded the pitch at Lord's yesterday have been charged with aggravated trespass. Judith Murray, Daniel Knorr and Jacob Bourne disrupted the second Ashes test yesterday. They'll appear at Westminster Magistrates Court next month. More on all those stories, head to our website, gbnews.com.
Now, have you heard that Iraq's most senior counter-terrorism leader has said that his men have uncovered an ISIS plot to attack the UK? Well, Iraqi special forces exposed the attack when carrying out a raid against a terror cell of ISIS fanatics who were hiding out in the desert. The terrorists, get this, were all British nationals. General al-Sadi warned that the plot was a big attack on a public gathering, but we don't know which one as it currently stands. Joining me now is former SAS trooper Phil Campion. Phil, thank you very, very much. I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but you've been all over the world dishing out violence in your time. How many British ISIS jihadis do you think are still out there?
There's thousands of them, and the scary thing is with the online stuff that goes on, you've almost got like a franchise organisation. You know, you've got people that can take those ideologies and can take the modus operandi and almost open up a franchise, like a McDonald's a little bit, you know what I mean? You can open up a McDonald's anywhere you like. Only these people aren't signposting where they are, okay? They're opening up franchises all over the world. You know, we've got IS in Africa, East Africa, West Africa. So it's all over the world, okay? And that's the scary thing for me. And our security services work around the clock against this sort of stuff. And like I say, things can be dug up and information can be gathered from across the globe. And, you know, and they've obviously got a little bit lucky with the information that's come out of Iraq just lately.
And this is interesting. So they were talking about the scale of what this attack was planned. They were saying it was a major attack at a public event that would have resulted in mass casualties, and this was being plotted essentially in the Iraqi desert, basically, by a load of British nationals. And this should be, I think, a massive wake-up call, because actually, thankfully, if it wasn't really, certainly in the short term, for the Iraqi counter-terrorism organisation, which I've got to be honest with you, I thought was a little bit of an oxymoron when I first read it, but the Iraqi counter-terrorism organisation, then actually, you know, we could have been staring down the barrel of something quite deadly. I mean, we are seriously under massive threat still, aren't we?
Absolutely. This threat hasn't gone away, and it just goes to highlight to me, the longer we go without an incident, the harder our security services are working. They work round the clock on this stuff, you know, and it goes back to what the IRA said years ago, you know. They've only got to be lucky once. We've got to be lucky all the time, okay? And to that end, there are people who dedicate, you know, hours and hours and hours of hard work going up against this stuff. And it's not just hard work in this country, it's hard work around the world. And what you've seen here is a sort of like little bit of a collaboration coming together where somebody else has flagged it up, and we've obviously got the information now, and it will be acted upon if it hasn't been already.
How do you feel about what's been going on in the Channel at the moment, in terms of, you look at this now, we've got British nationals out there in the desert plotting a terror attack that could have gone on to kill tens, if not hundreds of people in Britain. Surely ISIS and other groups are looking at this backdoor into Britain that we've got at the moment in the Channel and are thinking, well, we can have a bit of that.
Of course they are. Absolutely, 100% they are. For us to think that they're not is naive. You know, and that says to me, that red flag's all over the place, why we should be stepping up our game on things like our border policy and all that, and who we let in and who we don't let in, and what we do with them and what their qualifications are to actually, you know, verify who they are. It needs to be looked at very seriously, because, like I said, with the way and the nature of the world nowadays, with so much being done online, it's so much easier to recruit, and it's so much easier to indoctrinate and pass on what you want to do. Like I say, it's like a franchise now. It's like a franchise organisation. You can do it anywhere you want in the world, so long as you show willing and get online and learn the right stuff, you're in. You know, and that's extremely scary. And when you think that we don't have a full control on our borders and we don't know exactly what's coming and going, then that's even scarier, isn't it, you know?
Look, Phil, thank you very, very much. It's great to have your kind of insight there as well. Phil Campion, their former SAS trooper, just reacting to the reports anyway that there was a massive terror attack foiled. It was being planned by British ISIS fanatics in Iraq. I just feel like there should be a massive wake-up call to us. And when I have a look around now at the amount of British citizens who are being harmed by our soft-touch approach to what's going on in the Channel and to other forms of immigration as well, and to terror. You know, there was a period of time where we let in a higher proportion of ISIS jihadis back into our country than almost any other country in the world, when Daesh, as it was known then, was at its very height. So we've already done that. We've got this, what's going on in the Channel, we know is going to be a backdoor into Britain. for people who wish us harm as well. How many people have to suffer as a result of our ineptitude? But yes, look, loads more still to come here. Plenty more coming your way. ITV are facing criticism for portraying an average mum as a transgender person. And I've also got Joe Biden's latest gaffe for you.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, this'll get you going. It seems not even good old mum and dad are safe from the gender ideology anymore, so ITV are now facing criticism for portraying an average mum as transgender. By the way, they're also a left-wing activist, so we're ticking off the bingo card here, aren't we? And it's asking average mothers how the troubles of Thames Water is impacting them. The broadcaster decided to take a leaf out of Shakespeare's book and have a man portray the female lead. Let's just take a look.
This customer fears that either bill payers or taxpayers will end up picking up the tab.
The idea that we're going to have even greater water bills, soaring bills, at a time of prices already being hiked, we have to pay a lot for food. That's tough if you're a mum like me, already struggling to get the things that my kid needs.
Just a little bit of info there on Ms. Minio Paluello, believed to be in his early 40s. It was labelled there as a Thames Water customer. Well, apparently, according to reports, it's also the Trade Union Congress's Climate and Industry lead, and was also special advisor formerly to the Shadow Business, Energy and Industry Secretary, while Jeremy Corbyn was the leader of the Labour Party. So that's just your average mum. Anyway, joining me now is founder of Standing for Women. There's Kelly J. Keane. Gosh, did your mum look like that?
No. No, my mum didn't. You wouldn't have found your average mum back in the 1970s with a breast pump to the side of the washing up, which I would imagine was quite strategically placed. And then we have to think that there are small children and some poor wife loitering around who's not long given birth to an infant. So, you know, it's a really bleak picture, but thank you to ITV, because I think what they did is they helped peak a few more thousand people that day, and they showed that nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, there is, look, an underlying or overarching, in fact, really quite serious issue here at play, which is that this is how ingrained into modern society the idea of normality for the average mum. Your average mum now can be a man. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't think the average mum has a penis, but, you know, that's just me and my reality-based set of morals. It's pretty horrendous, isn't it? I mean, it's funny, it's hilarious, because I don't think there's anybody in the country who can honestly say they watched that advert and saw an average mum. I think we all saw a man. And for those of us who know quite a lot about this issue, we all saw somebody who probably is an AGP, an autogynephile. So I think it's just really sorry that corporations are just forcing this consistently down our throats. You know, Thames Water, the whole thing about Thames Water, the whole thing about water being now associated with this is it's just preposterous. I was walking in Cardiff City Centre the other day, and there was an Open Reach, like a Pride, Progress Pride, Open Reach sticker on, you know, a bit of telecommunication engineering box. And I'm just thinking, what's Open Reach got to do with LGBT? Like, I just want broadband. I don't really need to know that Open Reach is inclusive or wants men and women's spaces. I just need to know that, and as you can probably see, I don't have a great connection here, but I just need to know that when I switch on my broadband or when my kids want to do their homework, that they can connect to the internet. I couldn't really care less about the virtue signalling of large corporations, including ITV and Thames Water. But ITV obviously is an arm of the state. And as such, I think it's really terrible. They've managed to play the full bingo card, almost to possibly a wheelchair away from it, I would politely suggest, from the full bingo card there, because of course that person has been a political activist as well, and that I don't think was mentioned anywhere during that report. Kelly, thank you very much. As ever, great to have you on. And can I just say thank you very much for just injecting some common sense and rationality to proceedings as well. Kelly J. Keane there, founder of Standing for Women. Now, let's turn our attention to the unrest in France, actually, because the police shooting of a teen who was stopped for traffic offences has been deemed unlawful. The officer who opened fire is now under investigation for voluntary homicide. The shooting happened on Tuesday morning, sparking riots in Paris and French cities. I believe that GB News' reporter Paul Hawkins has the latest for us.
Cars alight. French riot police under attack. This was the Parisian suburb of Nanterre last night. Dozens of young people venting their anger. A second and worse night of violence that spread to other cities in France. At least 150 people arrested. The violence this morning condemned by the French president, who on Tuesday appealed for calm, calling the shooting unforgivable and inexplicable.
The last hours have been marked by violent scenes against police stations, but also schools and town halls, and basically against institutions and the Republic. It's absolutely unjustifiable.
This morning, Nanterre's public prosecutor gave more details about what happened, saying the yellow BMW with 3 people inside was stopped for erratic driving and because of the driver's young age. A chase ensued when it refused to comply, speeding past a red light and putting the public at risk. When the driver refused to stop again, the policeman shot the 17-year-old known as Nahel. One of the passengers was found later, but police are still looking for the other one. The officer who opened fire is now under investigation for voluntary homicide. But while France may be shocked, its ethnic minorities are not. Police figures show the majority of victims of lethal French police shootings during traffic stops since 2017 were black or Arab. France's human rights ombudsman has opened an inquiry into the shooting. Appeals for calm continue. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Let's go to Paris now and speak to journalist Régis Le Sommier. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. I hope you are safe because, according to reports here, 40,000 extra police across the country of France are flooding the streets. And in fact, we did have a live feed of what was going on in Paris. That has crashed because apparently there are too many people in the area and the signal's absolutely knackered. So what's going on where you are? Or has been going on anyway?
Well, it was very chaotic last night. I live in a little town which is next to Nanterre, actually. It's right on the other side of the hill. And you could hear a siren all night long and sound of shooting. There's another place called Suresnes also, which is right by, with a project that's been, the object of riots as well. So all throughout the Parisian suburbs, there were chaotic scenes last night and cars burned this morning. As we passed by, they even managed in my area to burn an entire tramway, which was never seen before, which is the T2, which is the line I regularly use to go to work, and they burned down an entire train. So it was that's the type of riots from the suburb that we have not seen since 2005 with that intensity, with that spread. And this is that's caught everyone by surprise.
Why this though? Why specifically this? Is there some kind of cultural undertone to this? Is this a divide between the working class or poorer people, I suppose, to put it more sensitively, maybe poorer people, or is there some kind of ethnic issue at play here? What's going on?
No, there was a problem with the way the president last night, when the dramatic shooting occurred, the president said right away, this is unacceptable. And as usual, when a politician of that spectrum intervene in something like this, it was almost an open word for the riots to occur because the rioters could see, well, the president is on our side. He's not on the side of the police. And more in this type of events, the police and the rioters are, there are two camps. Whereas, I mean, when you look at things, it's a little more complicated than the police being racist and attacking or, trying to shoot at young kids from the suburbs. First, the one that was killed, tragically killed, had a heavy record of unrest, and he was, known by the judicial institution, even though he was only 17. And so it was not an angel like Kylian Mbappé, our French football player described him. So and the story is not only a guy, pulling out his gun and shooting. There's a whole complicated, traffic unrest story before that. However, that doesn't excuse for a policeman to shoot at a guy. He should have shot, in the tire of the car or do something to stop the car differently. He purposely aimed at the little boy and killed him. So but there's a need for justice. There's a need for clarification. And the words by Macron were very, very awkward and actually really opened, in my opinion, said, okay, we're going to riot, and the French authority won't be able to say anything.
I honestly just wonder whether the human race is just becoming ungovernable, actually, when you look at the way that people kick off over the definitely fallible and problematic death of somebody. There's no getting around that, but who has got a criminal record and who is no angel. And then the people that you look for to lead them make massive mistakes. And then everyone goes out on the streets and sets things on fire. And you just think, good grief, what's happening? Look, I'm going to have to leave it there, Regis, but thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Hopefully talk to you again soon. Regis Le Sommier there. Right, very quickly, people, I am still rattling the can for the donations for the Dream Boys. Oh, flipping hats. This was me on stage last night with the Dream Boys. Yes, last night I did do my strip on stage. Thank you very much for everybody who's been donating. This was my end of the bargain. I said that if you guys give a load of money to justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys, I would get on stage and strip with the Dream Boys. So there we go. Right. justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. There will be a much fuller version of that. Did I go the full Monty? Find out shortly.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 5 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News. And what on earth will it take for people to realise that Rwanda actually is a safe country? We've just bothered to speak to somebody in Rwanda who's given a massively glowing experience of the place, but our judges here have kicked it back into the long grass. Is time running out for us to control our borders, and should we now have a referendum on the Rwanda plan? In other news, though, is this a non-stop Tory witch hunt? The Privileges Committee, of course, led by Harriet Harman, who already decided that Boris Johnson was a liar. Oh, was that Bernard Junkin over there? Did you happen to have a lockdown-breaking party that may have been worse than Boris Johnson's? Oh, OK. Yeah, well, anyway, now they are going after people who dared to criticise the committee. Do you want to know what some of the most disturbing elements of that criticism were? One tweet by Michael Fabricant that said they need looking into. Thin skin much? In other news, we're also going to be talking a lot as well about this. Now, this is fascinating. Will the king go skint? Apparently, Charles is about 500 million quid out of pocket. I don't want a skint king. What's going on? And we're also going to be, of course, discussing all of this. This is a very serious story, and a story that I think all of us could see coming an absolute mile off. Schoolgirls have apparently been sexually assaulted in a gender-neutral toilet at a school in Essex. This is going to keep on happening if we don't get to grips with this gender-neutral nonsense. So there we go. And finally, as well, the big reveal. Yes, OK, so I indeed was on stage with the Dream Boys last night in the culmination of my big push to try to raise some money for the mental health charity Mind. We are now on about £83,000. I think it's going up and up and up. JustGiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christys. The full video of my performance will, once we've edited it, be out very, very shortly. So anyway, stay tuned for that. Yes, OK, all right, so anyway, get in touch. Serious matters now. Are you angry about Rwanda? Do you think that we should have a referendum on Rwanda or the illegal migration bill? Just put it to bed. I'm sick and tired of being kicked into the long grass. It's also worth noting that of the 3 judges that had to decide on it, 1 of them agreed with the government, so it's a split decision. GBviews at GBnews.com. Now, though, headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. Well, the top story this hour is that the Home Secretary says she remains fully committed to the Rwanda policy, despite the legal setback. Suella Braverman also suggested the current system was rigged against the British people on the issue. Earlier, the Prime Minister said he also fundamentally disagreed with the Court of Appeal after it deemed the move unlawful. 2 of the 3 judges found the East African country was unsafe. The Rwandan government disagreed, claiming it is one of the safest countries in the world. The Home Secretary said the government will now seek permission to appeal to the Supreme Court.
It's unfair, Mr. Speaker, on people and our partners in the developing world that we in the West continue to maintain an asylum seeker system so open to abuse, that it incentivises mass flows of economic migration into Europe, lining the pockets of people smugglers and turning our seas into graveyards, all in the name of a phony humanitarianism.
Now, spying on left-wing groups by secret Metropolitan Police squads wasn't justified, and the unit should have been disbanded. That comes after a public inquiry into undercover policing looked at the activities of the SDS, or Special Demonstration Squad, between 1968 and 1982. A spokesperson for the campaigners said the findings were devastating for the police. The police apologised for what happened over 40 years ago, saying that undercover policing has since undergone radical reform. Now, you've been hearing that in France, a police officer has been placed under formal investigation for voluntary manslaughter after a teenage pizza delivery driver was shot dead by traffic police. The mother of the 17-year-old, Nahal M, is leading a march in Nanterre, that's a western suburb of Paris, in tribute to her son, and she's demanding justice. At least 180 people have been arrested so far after 2 nights of unrest that followed Nahal's death. Earlier, it was announced that 40,000 police officers would be deployed to the streets to deal with the unrest. Here, Boris Johnson's allies have been criticised by the Privileges Committee for what it describes as undermining House of Commons procedures. They include Nadine Dorris, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg and Priti Patel. The Privileges Committee report 2 weeks ago found the former Prime Minister had repeatedly misled Parliament over COVID-19 breaches at Number 10 during lockdown. The inquiry now says MPs should consider whether their actions could be in contempt of Parliament and what further action needs to be taken. Well, Nicola Sturgeon has been telling the COVID-19 inquiry that Scotland had no plan for a non-flu pandemic and that learning from the episode was of critical importance. The former First Minister was questioned this morning on how prepared Scotland was, as well as how she, as a politician, handled the pandemic. She told the inquiry her government did its best, but admitted it didn't get everything right. She was asked about the plan's viability.
There was no set plan, which, as I say, is not the same as saying there was no thinking into how we dealt with a pandemic that had features and characteristics of flu in terms of transmissibility, but also the severity and what we came to understand in terms of the asymptomatic transmission of COVID-19. So I would readily accept that there was a gap in terms of the pandemic we ultimately were dealing with.
The utilities giant Thames Water says it's working with its shareholders to secure extra funding as ministers draw up contingency plans to potentially nationalise it in the event of its collapse. The UK's biggest water supplier is battling to service its £14 billion worth of debt following interest rate rises. Parliamentary Under-Secretary for Health Neil O'Brien says the government will step in if needed. And the 3 Just Stop Oil protesters who invaded the pitch at Lord's Cricket Ground in London yesterday have all been charged with aggravated trespass. Judith Murray, Daniel Knorr and Jacob Bourne disrupted the second Ashes test yesterday. They'll appear at Westminster Magistrates Court next month. Now, one of the world's most used artificial sweeteners could be declared a possible carcinogen next month. New research from the World Health Organization has found aspartame used in cola and chewing gum could potentially cause cancer. The study by the International Agency for Research on Cancer doesn't take into account how much of a product a person can safely consume. Now, if you've ever dreamed of having your own private jet, a plane all to yourself, well, that's exactly what happened rather unexpectedly to one estate agent in the United States. Phil Stringer was the sole passenger on an American Airlines flight going from Oklahoma City to Charlotte. The flight had been repeatedly delayed due to severe storms, causing widespread cancellations when it finally left after an 18-hour delay. And just one passenger left on board. Lucky chap. With GB News, more news as it happens.
I've got loads on this hour, but I feel particularly strongly about this, so I just wanted to go in on it, really. Does anybody really think that gender-neutral loos in schools are a good idea? I don't. What about changing facilities? I don't either. And stories like this don't make me want to change my mind. A police investigation has been launched into allegations that female pupils were sexually assaulted in a school's gender-neutral toilets. Officers have arrested a teenage boy over 4 claims of serious sexual assault, 3 of which allegedly took place in the toilets used by both boys and girls. That's at that Essex school. The school did not conduct an impact assessment on the gender-neutral lavatories or changing rooms. Now, I'll do a risk assessment for you right now, then. If you give a load of teenage boys access to a private area where young girls will be naked, then there is a significant risk. This shouldn't be a shock to people. If a child appears to have a keen interest in accessing those areas and suddenly wants to change their gender identity in order to be able to do so, that is a significant risk. Don't do it. The school could not confirm whether other lavatories, which are designed male or female, could be accessed on the basis of biological sex or a pupil's gender identity, because it does not have a written policy. Schools are required to provide separate toilets for children aged 8 and over. However, a recent report by the Policy Exchange think tank found that 28% were failing to do so. That is an astonishingly high number. This is the madness of inclusivity and diversity at times. The lunatic fringe of it, actually. If I found out that I'd sent my daughter to school and then that school had implemented a policy that allowed a sexual predator to attack her, I would be so angry I would want to burn the place down. If the 0.01% of the school population who are transgender have to use a toilet that makes them feel slightly uncomfortable, then so be it, because the 100% of female students cannot be made less safe. GBviews at gbnews.com. I'm returning to that a little bit later on, but our top story of the day is, of course, Rwanda. Now, Suella Braverman has spoken in the House of Commons after the judgment that the Rwanda policy is, quote, unlawful. Earlier today, the Home Secretary suggested the current system was rigged against the British people, and I think she is absolutely banged on. Look at what we've got going on at the moment. We are now in a situation where we have to accept everyone who's coming over the channel. We can't really deport any of them. It's going to cost the taxpayer somewhere in the region of £32 million a day. It's costing tens of thousands of people their jobs. It's costing us our safety. It's costing us our national dignity. And now we can't deport them to Rwanda. Why? Because they're saying that Rwanda is not a safe country. But that is not quite true. When someone now says to you, oh, well, Rwanda's not safe, the judges have said it, tell them they're wrong. Because what they've said is they can't necessarily say with absolute certainty that when somebody is deported to Rwanda and Rwanda looks at, or processed in Rwanda, when someone looks at their application in Rwanda, that they won't be deported to an unsafe country. And that makes Rwanda, in the eyes of the law at the minute, the judges, 3 of them, 2 of them, it makes it unsafe. That makes it an unsafe country. I just find that absolutely astonishing. We're going to go to Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, right now. This decision will be challenged at the Supreme Court. But, Mark, I mean, I've just gone to Rwanda and spoken to somebody there talking about what a safe, diverse, inclusive country it is with a history and a proven track record of welcoming, accepting refugees and asylum seekers. What was this judgment that took place in the building behind you?
I missed that last part. Sorry, Patrick.
What was the judgment that took place? What was the reasons behind the judgment?
Well, I mean, you heard, as far as Suella Braverman was concerned, the clarification on the point with regard to the safety of those asylum seekers sent to Rwanda, that it wasn't an issue of them not being safe in Rwanda itself, but concerns by 2 of these appeal court judges that those sent to Rwanda could find that their appeals are rejected and they end up back in the countries that perhaps they'd fled in the first place because they'd been tortured or were threatened with death. That was a decision that was reached by 2 of the judges. The 3rd judge, though, the Lord Chief Justice, Lord Burnett, disagreed. He was persuaded by the assurances that were given by the Rwanda government that they would not do this. The fact that the Rwandan government does not have returns agreements with those countries concerned that the asylum seekers were from, and also that Rwanda has agreed to participate in a robust international monitoring system to ensure that they are sticking to their part of the deal as well. So on the issue of is Rwanda actually intrinsically a safe country, Suella Braverman arguing yes, it is still a safe country, and that the Court of Appeal judges here were not suggesting that it wasn't.
Look, Mark, thank you very, very much. It is a bit of a minefield. Excuse me, such a minefield that I choked on it to get through there. But you've done an expert job on it. Mark White there, Home and Security Editor, is outside the Royal Court of Justice. Now, joining me is Richard Champong. He came to the UK from Ghana and once faced being deported, but now has British citizenship. And I understand as well that he's now a corporate lawyer in the City of London and an entrepreneur owning a security business with hundreds of staff. Look, thank you very much. It's great to have you on the show. What's your feeling then, your impression, about this idea that Rwanda is, in the eyes of the law, in some ways now an unsafe country, that we couldn't send people for processing over there? What do you reckon?
Thank you, Patrick, for having me on the program. I got the news this afternoon that the Appeal Court has overturned the High Court decision, and I respectfully disagree. I think what the Appeal Court has done is to equate an imperfect system to a safe country. And I shall explain that. Look at the current asylum system over here. When people were housed in hotels around Liverpool and in London, they were harassed. They were not properly fed. It takes such a long time for immigration decisions to be made or asylum decisions to be taken on people's applications, sometimes months and years. Such issues are torture. So if you look at it from that perspective, then there is no perfect system. So to say that Rwanda is not a safe country, I think they are just equating an imperfect system to safety.
I think you make a series of really good points there, which is that we, at the moment, have a broken system that is unfair and not working for anybody, that I would argue is making everybody less safe and is costing us a lot of money. And yet we have decided today that we can't possibly send people to Rwanda because they won't be able to do it right over there. It's actually quite offensive to the people of Rwanda, I think.
I think that is just a point I have made earlier. There is no perfect system. If you look at it, people really go through a lot of psychological torture when they are waiting for their applications to be determined. And so the Rwanda government agreed with the government of the United Kingdom to take on these people. So I believe that there are safety measures built into the whole arrangement. Rwanda cannot, on its own accord, say that, look, your immigration application has not succeeded, and for which reason they are sending you back to where you came from. They have to work with the United Kingdom government.
So this is the thing, isn't it? Now, can I just ask you a little bit really about your own experience? Okay, so you came to the UK from Ghana, is that correct? And you once faced being deported back there, but are now a British citizen. Could you just explain what happened with you, if that's all right?
Right. I was on holiday here. I was at university, finished my second year, going to the final year when I came on holiday here in 1998. 2 weeks before my departure back to Ghana, I had an accident and I was hospitalized for more than 7 months. Throughout that period, the Home Office wanted to deport me. My doctors wrote to the Home Office saying that this man is injured, he's in the hospital, you cannot basically deport him. So after hospital, I had to make a series of applications out to the Home Office to regularize my stay. They refused. But throughout that period, I managed to go to school, finish my degree, did my master's, and I couldn't get a job because obviously I was still under immigration control. So what I did was to set up my own businesses while still under immigration control. And I ran a successful business from 2001 to 2005, wound it down and went into security business. So I ran that up to a point and rebranded the company from 2010. And today we have hundreds of people on our books, and still counting. I then, decided I wanted to train as a lawyer. In 2012, I did my LLB and then went to law school, qualified as a solicitor in 2016, and also trained as a barrister in Ghana. So I hold dual qualification as a lawyer.
Wow, fantastic! I mean, it's quite a story, and I was just wondering, given all of that and given the fact that, by the sounds of it, at some point you were in a hospital bed and the Home Office was trying to deport you, which obviously clearly can't have been nice. How do you feel, having been through stuff like that, about the idea that somebody who comes here illegally in a dinghy across the Channel might one day be sent for processing in Rwanda? Are you OK with that as a concept?
Well, I mean, I wrote an article which was published in the Daily Express on the 23rd of this month. What I said was basically, I am against the gangs. I'm not against the refugees. Look, this country needs immigrants, and it is well documented. Every advanced country needs immigration to survive, especially looking at the labor market. The point is this: criminal gangs are exploiting these vulnerable people, putting them on dinghies and boats, crossing the Mediterranean and then the English Channel. And basically hundreds, if not thousands of them are dying. That is what I am against. So if people properly apply and become, get the right to live and study in this country, I think they can contribute to this country. So my issue is with the gangs exploiting these vulnerable people. It is not right. Of course, we understand that the Home Office is very, very slow in processing applications. This is contributing to the problem. I
get all of that. I just wanted to, I do understand all of that, and I respect your point of view on it. Just really quickly, would you be you're all right morally with the idea of putting people on a plane to Rwanda, right, or not?
I'll be right with it because it will stop the gangs.
Right.
If you stop the gangs of oxygen, their business dies, and then we will not see people dying trying to cross the Mediterranean and the English Channel. So I'm absolutely comfortable with that.
Look,
that is a way of sending a message to the gangs.
Good stuff. Look, thank you very much. Richard, great to chat to you. Could talk to you much longer. We're out of time, I'm afraid. I'll chat to you soon. Richard Champong there, who came from Ghana, faced deportation, now has got a successful business here. Interesting stuff, that, I thought. GBviews at gbnews.com. You are watching and listening to GB News. Coming up in just a moment, Boris allies Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg has been heavily criticised for putting quite improper pressure over the Partygate investigation. Look, I'm absolutely sick of this. There's a bunch of flipping crybabies at the Privileges Committee. Just get over yourselves. Leave everyone alone. Have a look in the mirror. Anyway, this is much more to come between now and the end of the show, including some very concerning stuff from Nigel Farage, who apparently is having his bank accounts closed. If it could happen to him, it can happen to you. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Radio.
Well, the House of Commons Privileges Committee has released its report into the process of its Partygate inquiry. Right, so report into report into report into report. Now, this is, of course, into Boris Johnson, right, who was absolutely mullered and hounded non-stop. It's now lambasted MPs who sought to undermine the work of the committee. So bear this in mind, OK? Boris Johnson, Prime Minister at the time, this was all about the fact that he thought he was above the rules. And even in this country, as Prime Minister, you are not above the rules. But the Privileges Committee wants to be above the rules, doesn't it? Because it's got somebody there fronting it up who obviously hated Boris from the start, in my view. And then you've got somebody who may or may not have broken the rules in a worse way than Boris Johnson. And now you can't even criticise it, which is mad. Angela Epstein joins me now, journalist and broadcaster. Angela, thank you very much. Do you not just think this is the reason people hate politics? Because of holier-than-thou worthy people like this? I understand that we need to have some rules and regs, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, saying that someone has been... it's been incredibly disgusting and disturbing what's happened. And someone just tweeted saying, I think this committee needs looking into. That was it.
Well, in my neck of the woods, I'm coming to you from the north, from Manchester, we say grow some. The committee should grow some. That's my simple estimation. In my view, improper pressure means that you feel somebody's collar in a dark corner somewhere, hold something sharp to their neck and say, don't do as I say, and there will be consequences. Sending emails or expressing a view, and we pride free speech in this country, and we should hold up our systems to scrutiny, is not improper pressure. I'm happy to say, as somebody who is not a politician, that I thought it was a witch hunt and a kangaroo court. So, are they going to come after me now? I think we pride free speech, as I said, and it's not as if this report has actually spelt out what the censure should be, because obviously the MPs will now have to make their judgment based on this. But it's done. It's over. You're right about us being fed up. Boris is gone. He's been deposed. He's gone away to make his millions, writing books, and does a jolly good column that I've been reading for the last couple of weeks. And maybe he's biding his time and he's going to reflect whether he wants to make a return or not. But the fact is, the seat is empty. He's done. It's over.
But I'm sorry, at what point are people going to wake up to the idea that this could just well be some kind of purge? Because if Boris Johnson, massively democratically elected, Brexiteer, supposedly right-wing, although actually, to be fair, when you actually look at some of his policies, they weren't that right-wing. But, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Yeah, another Mr Brexit. He's been named in all of this. You've got the likes of Brendan Clark-Smith, you've got Priti Patel, you've got Michael Fabricant, and it's coming after all of these people. At what point are people going to wake up and go, is anyone noticing the demographic of individual that they're coming after here and wondering whether or not this is just sort of trying to remove those people from British political life?
Which actually, I mean, the observer who's just flown in from another planet, doesn't know the background, would say this smacks of a witch hunt.
Yeah.
It just seems to me that there's one rule for some and one rule for others, as they say around here. Because on the one hand, as you rightly said, this committee was steered by somebody who had declared in a tweet a year earlier what her position was on Boris Johnson. So that's okay. And as you said about somebody else on the committee whose status is being questioned, that's all okay. But, you know, in this fine democratic society in which we live, it's not okay to express an opinion.
Yeah.
So going on talk shows, writing columns in newspapers, we should be celebrating the fact that we call to account the processes that exist in this country, wherever you sit on the political spectrum.
You know, what about, as well, the pressure? They talk about undue influence. They want to put undue influence and pressure on the committee. What about the pressure that Boris Johnson was under? Waking up every single day to liar, 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 non-stop, non-stop. Things being pumped out. Here's a new picture of him somewhere near some cake. Here's that catastrophic situation that went on the front of every national newspaper in the House of Commons. For months on end, until it got to this. And then we end up in this situation where he's got to employ the lawyers. OK, the taxpayer's paying for that, it would appear. And then on top of that, there's calls for him to lose his job. He's then continually hounded. He doesn't have a pass. If Boris Johnson was some kind of lefty-lovey celeb, and I say this with my eyes wide open because I'm doing a campaign about mental health now, but I hope people can see the distinction between that and what I'm about to say. If he just stood up, he'd have had every right to go, excuse me, I am being bullied here massively. Do you not realise the impact that this hate campaign is having on me on a day-to-day basis? I just don't think they realise that.
Well, I think there was definitely an element of hounding. I mean, you are fair game when you are Prime Minister. I think you have to accept that you are front and centre of public life, that you have to be able to take the brickbats and they're going to be relentless and they're going to be some very, very sharp elbows nudging you out of the way. But, sorry, all I was going to say is, to me, it boils down to something quite simple. If that's allowed without being in any way calibrated or censured or assessed, then you should be allowed to send emails at the very least or go on television and express your view. And this is why the whole thing's, it's rank. It smacks of such great injustice and unfairness. Whatever you think about Boris Johnson, some people he was the great white saviour. For some people he was just, they couldn't get rid of him fast enough. But I think if the system stinks, and that's wrong, core, that's what we should be bothered about, as well as your original point about the fact that the general public worrying about cost of living, their water is clean. I mean, blimey.
Oh, it's just madness. Oh, yeah, no, oh, sorry, yeah, Harriet Harman, oh, yeah, no, you were offended by a tweet. That matters. Anyway, Angela, thank you very much. Angela Epstein, journalist, broadcaster, fantastic. Right, look, talking of this, the idea of a witch hunt or something more sinister going on, OK? Get a load of this. Our very own Nigel Farage could have his bank account frozen any day now. The bank has said it was a commercial reason. But that seems rather unlikely, doesn't it? Is there now a proper establishment push to get rid of anyone from our society who they disagree with? If it can happen to Nigel, if things like this can happen to Jacob Rees-Mogg or to what we've just been hearing about Boris Johnson, etc., it can happen to you. More on this when I come back after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you. The top stories this hour. The Home Secretary says she remains fully committed to the Rwanda policy despite the legal setback. Suella Braverman also suggested the current system was rigged against the British people. Earlier, the Prime Minister said he fundamentally disagreed with the Court of Appeal after they deemed it unlawful. 2 of the 3 judges found the East African country was unsafe. The Rwandan government disagreed, claiming it's one of the safest countries in the world. Spying on left-wing groups by a secret Metropolitan Police squad wasn't justified and the unit should have been disbanded. That's after a public inquiry into undercover policing looked at the activities of the SDS, or Special Demonstration Squad, between 1968 and 1982. A spokesperson for campaigners says the findings are devastating for the police. The police, though, has apologised, saying what happened 40 years ago has since undergone radical reform. And in France, the mother of the 17-year-old pizza delivery boy shot dead by Parisian traffic police has been leading a march demanding justice for her son. People have taken to the streets across France to protest against the killing for a second night. Over 150 people have been arrested for rioting. A police officer has been placed under formal investigation for voluntary manslaughter. Earlier, it was announced 40,000 police officers would be deployed across the country to deal with the unrest. And here, 3 Just Stop Oil protesters who invaded the pitch at Lord's have been charged with aggravated trespass. Judith Murray, Daniel Knorr and Jacob Bourne disrupted the second Ashes test yesterday. They'll appear at Westminster Magistrates Court next month. More on all those stories, head to our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
And here's how the numbers are stacking up. The pound buying you $1.2615 and €1.1597. The price of gold is £1,513.07 if you fancy an ounce. And the FTSE 100 has closed the day at 7,471 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Now, shockingly, GB News presenter and Trick Awards winner Nigel Farage could have his bank account frozen imminently. Or closed, I think I should say, really. He's been with the same banking company since the 1990s, and they have explained to him that it was, quote, a commercial decision. I'm going to throw it over to Nigel, actually. Here he is.
I have been with the same banking group since 1980. I've had my personal accounts with them since that date, and my business accounts right through the 1990s, when I worked in the City of London, and in recent years too. I'm with one of the subsidiaries of this big banking group, one with a very prestigious name, but I won't name them just yet. I got a phone call a couple of months ago to say, we are closing your accounts. I asked why. No reason was given. I was told a letter would come which would explain everything. The letter came through and simply said, we are closing your accounts. We want to finish it all by a date, which is around about now. I didn't quite know what to make of it. I complained. I emailed the chairman. A lackey phoned me to say that it was a commercial decision, which I have to say, I don't believe for a single moment.
Look, this is incredibly sinister, OK? So one day, out of the blue, you can get told that your bank account could be shut. And you go round to 7 other banks. They say, no, we're not doing that either. This surely is based around who Nigel Farage is, as opposed to, I would imagine, the substance of his bank account. General Secretary of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young, joins me now. Toby, what's your view on this? Because I just feel like this is quite chilling, really.
It is extremely chilling. It's the kind of thing we'd expect to happen in China, but not the kind of thing we'd expect to happen in a Western liberal democracy. It sounds like the Chinese social credit system, whereby if you say something the communist authorities disapprove of, you lose access to your bank accounts. It happened to me, Patrick, last year. PayPal debanked me, the Free Speech Union, and the Daily Skeptic, my news publishing site. And only after I kicked up an enormous stink about it did they then restore my accounts. But since then, the Free Speech Union has been lobbying the Treasury to change the financial regulations to make it impossible for payment services providers to withdraw custom from people purely on their political beliefs. And we see that happening more and more. It's shocking and it's sinister. It's a new sinister form of cancel culture.
I mean, it's absolutely outrageous, though, isn't it? Because in theory, I know Nigel is obviously very exposed, and he goes on to say that this is one of the key issues. There was an EU thing about a politically exposed person, right? But actually, if you extrapolate that out, I mean, that could be anyone, really. I mean, you could go right down to your local councillor. I suppose, I mean, I'm not a member of a political party, but I spend most of my days talking about politics. Could that be me? You know, and it would appear to be very easy for a bank to go, we are financially cancelling you, and then for you to not be able to go with any other bank anywhere in this country. And then the natural step would have to be you'd probably have to leave the country, wouldn't you? Which is pretty brutal.
It's pretty brutal. And even if Nigel was to move to France, he has no guarantee that he could open a bank account in France. At least Nigel was given some notice by his bank that they wanted to dispose of his custom. We had a member of the Free Speech Union contacted me earlier this week, Patrick, who discovered that his bank account had been closed when he tried to pay for something in a supermarket. His card was declined. He called up the bank and they said, we've closed your account because we disapprove of your views on the trans issue. Another person contacted me today. The Yorkshire Building Society. They asked their customers for feedback on their website. During Pride Month, they, of course, festooned the website with rainbow flags. He gave some feedback on this, and he didn't see why they were taking sides on this contentious political issue. Why didn't they just stick to their knitting? And they withdrew. They decided to close all his accounts as a consequence. They asked for feedback. He gave it to them. He didn't realise that if he expressed the wrong opinion, he'd be debanked. But that's what happened to him. It's extraordinary. It's happening all the time.
Well, when you try to debunk, you get debanked. And that seems to be a massive issue, doesn't it, really, on this? Look, just to express again, Toby, this, the key point here is that we, in this, bear in mind that a theme throughout today's show has been, we can't possibly deport people for processing in Rwanda because it's this unsafe country that can't be trusted, right? And the conversation that we've just had is about if you express the wrong kind of view, your bank will shut you down. I mean, we're not great at the minute, are we, over here, when it comes to free speech?
No. I mean, frankly, Patrick, if I was an asylum seeker and arrived on Britain's shores in a small boat and I was deported to Rwanda, I'd actually be quite pleased, I think. Rwanda, for all its shortcomings, I think probably has more respect for free speech than we do now. I mean, it is an extraordinary state of affairs.
It is. Look, Toby, thank you very much. Always appreciate you on the show. Great stuff, that. Toby Young, who is the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union. I think it is worthwhile noting that the man himself, Nigel Farage, who I think might have just entered the building, actually, will be on air this evening from 8 p.m. So keep yourselves... 7 p.m. Oh, sorry, no, I do occasionally watch. From 7 p.m, so make sure that you tune in for that. It'll be one not to miss. If you turn up at 8, you will have missed it, though. Anyway, right, there's loads more coming up on GB News before I say goodbye. Could King Charles go broke? Yeah, that's right. Charlie Ray, one Charles who will never go broke is Charlie Ray. He will give us the answer very shortly. Will our king go skint? Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh no, it's happened again, Joe, hasn't it? To be fair, it's been at least 2 months, is it? Since Joe Biden's last gaffe in Ireland, where he managed to reference the New Zealand rugby team as the Black and Tans instead of the All Blacks. Anyway, the Black and Tans was, of course, the rather unfortunate nickname of the British soldiers who fought Irish rebels just over 100 years ago, when Joe Biden was but a wee boy. But yes, in the latest blunder, Joe Biden has said that the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, is losing the war in Iraq. Ladies and gentlemen, I have you, the President now of the United States of America. Take it away.
Has Vladimir Putin been weakened by recent events? It's hard to tell, but he's clearly losing the war in Iraq. He's losing the war at home.
Oh, grief. He doesn't have a clue what's going on, does he? I mean, how long is it before he's just found rampaging through the grounds of the White House just with an open dressing gown on, shouting about the latest Muhammad Ali fight and when it is? Anyway, now, the royal family's juicy accounts for last year have been released, and it looks like there's been some big losses in there. It's shown that because of the value of property has dropped, King Charles's portfolio has fallen by £500 million. So I wanted to know whether or not our king will go skint. The family has had to dig deep into their own pockets because there's a £20 million gap in what they've spent compared to the taxpayer funded them. But no wonder King Charles ordered the heating in his royal homes to be turned down to a mere 19 degrees. Joining me now is royal correspondent, is the one and only Charlie Ray. Charlie Ray,
hello.
Are we about to have a skink king?
No, Patrick, don't you worry. We don't have to start having a crowdfunding issue for him, and you don't have to get your kit off for the king as you have done for Mind, a worthy cause. And it's unlikely we're going to be seeing Charles and Camilla selling the big issue outside the palace. All is safe.
Good. All right. Look, just to explain to us a little bit about this, because that would appear to be obviously a startling loss and a huge, significant amount of money for them to have to fork out. But there's more to it than meets the eye, I believe, Charlie.
It doesn't matter if you're a prince or a king and a pauper. We're all suffering from the cost of living crisis, as is the king. His portfolio has gone down, as you quite rightly said, by $500 million, which sounds an incredible amount of money. But that is because the footfall from the West End, there's not enough people going out to spend. The properties that he has, there's more of them lying empty. They're not being taken up by companies. He's also had an awful lot of, well, the monarch has had an awful lot of costs. The funeral of the late Queen, 1.6 million. There's also a small amount of money, about £500,000 that's been used to pay off 16 of her staff as they've lost their jobs as a result of her death. So that all these sort of things, you know, add up, and it's taking its toll. And you mentioned, and you're right to have a little giggle, that he's turning down all the thermostats at the palaces and various rooms, turning them off. He's even switched off the heating in the Buckingham Palace swimming pool. So there's very few people are actually now going for a morning swim. So he doesn't want to. I mean, he's taken about £20 million to top up what we give the king as taxpayers, 86 million. There was 107 million. So he's taken it from his rainy day fund that they have, and he's used that to top it all up. So we're still going to be paying 86 million, which equates to £1.29 per person.
Well, this is it, actually. This is it. And it is nice. I mean, to be fair, I wish my rainy day fund was that size. But you know, fair play. I'm not a king. And this is the answer that I say to anyone whenever they go, oh, my gosh, look how rich he is. Look, he's got this. Yeah, he is the king, right? That's it. Yeah. Now, remember when the Queen did one of her Christmas messages, and there was this big hoo-ha about, if you see, she's got a gold piano behind it. I mean, she's not going to have an IKEA couch and live, laugh, love on the wall, is she? I mean, she's the Queen, right? You know, so, yes. But the point here, I would argue, is that he has had to dig deep, and he has suffered a lot. Yes, his wealth might be significantly larger than everybody else, but also in this case, so are his losses.
That's absolutely true. The richer you are, the bigger the losses, obviously, in any crisis. We're all facing problems with high interest rates, the gas and electricity. Can you imagine his gas and electricity bill? He's trying to cut that down by switching off an awful lot of things and switching things to the cars that they've got, to switching them to all electric, and in the hope that will cut down. So he's doing these little things which seem normal to us, but he's doing these little things that will help save the king and the monarchy money in the long run.
Charlie, thank you very much. Always a pleasure, my good man. Charles Ray there, royal correspondent, royal expert. Right, OK, so I just want to say a massive thank you again to everybody who has donated and parted with their hard-earned cash for the mental health charity Mind. I upheld my end of the bargain last night. As you can see, I stripped on stage with the Dream Boys. I did 3 little routines on the night. This is a bit of one of them. A full package will be, for want of a better phrase, exposed to you at some point a little bit later on. There's rather a lot of editing that needs to be doing because some of that performance was utter filth. But there we go. That was me on stage with the Dream Boys last night doing one of my solos. So that's something that I think we can all agree will put you off your tea. But justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys is that link. We are currently on around £83,000. It'd be great if we can get that up to around 90 grand before we call it a day early next week. Really appreciate it if you've got just a couple of quid spare, even if it's just £2. Justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. Michelle Dewberry joins me now for Jubes & Co. up next. Michelle.
I think we should try and track down the individual that collected your ripped, sweaty vest and interview them on GB News, because I'd absolutely love to know, when you grab and become the lucky winner of said sweaty vest, what do you do with it? Or do you take it home? Yeah. Do you put it in a frame? Are you is it kind of like a sniff blanket that brings you comfort when you go to bed? What does this person do with your sweaty vest?
It'll emerge at an auction in about 20 years' time, won't it?
Do you think?
And it'll sell for...
As worn by Patrick
and it'll sell for 50p.
Do you think? No, I think you're being a bit ambitious there. 25.
25, yeah,
Possibly.
25p.
Yeah, possibly. But good on you. I think you look absolutely fabulous, and I think you've raised an absolute fortune. Tell you what I want to get into on my show tonight, among all of the other stories in town. Central bank digital currency. People don't even know what they are. These are going to be a proper game changer. I think you need to be aware and alert and say no. That's what I reckon.
People need to keep hold of cash.
They do. They do indeed. Well, good luck even having cash these days. Times are tight for everyone, aren't they? Want to get into the Rwanda thing as well. Absolutely ridiculous. I think if you ask me, it's time to just ignore these costs, crack on with it and deal with the consequences afterwards.
I couldn't agree with you more. I could not agree with you more.
Ben Habib is with me as well. He's got strong words to say about that, I can tell you.
Lovely stuff. Right, it's going to be a fantastic show. Michelle Dewberry up next with Jubes & Co, hitting all those top topics. Thank you very much, everybody. I've been Patrick Christys. See you tomorrow at 3.
Good afternoon, welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. Now, through this evening, a lot of the UK will see dry weather, lots of clear spells. But over the next few days, we're going to continue to see wetter weather push in from the northwest. You can see a front pushing into Scotland later today, and then another one out at the Atlantic at the moment will arrive into the southwest throughout tomorrow. But things will clear up through the rest of the days for most areas. So you can see quite a lot of clear spells developing across the whole of the UK. However, across the far north of Scotland, we've got the first of those fronts coming in, and they could bring some quite hefty downpours throughout the night. But for most of us, clear spells and temperatures a little bit down compared to last night, so a fresher feel by the time we get to Friday morning. Some good sunshine to start for many central and eastern areas of the UK, but then we see that next front push into the southwest. So we'll see some rain, quite a lot of cloud around. The rain's not going to be too heavy, but most areas should see a few spits and spots. But it's the far northwest, so Northern Ireland and much of western and northern Scotland that will see another batch of rain. Again, there's not too many heavy bursts in there, but it will feel quite dull. And temperatures a little bit down compared to today, tomorrow. So a cooler feel on Friday, just because there's a lot more cloud around. And then through Friday evening, the rain will continue to push in across many northern areas, bringing quite a lot of cloud around overnight. So it's quite a dull night, quite a lot of low cloud, particularly on any high ground as well. And across the southeast, it's going to be a very mild night. So temperatures holding up in the high teens across the southeast and the mid-teens for many towns and cities elsewhere to start on Saturday. Now, we'll start off with quite a lot of cloud through Saturday morning, but it's going to brighten up through the day, so a good amount of sunshine by the afternoon. And then on Sunday, again, a relatively dry day for many areas, but the breeze will start to pick up, especially across Scotland, where there'll be some particularly heavy rain.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story.